Everybody, welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks. This is the Grand Forks City Council's Committee of the Whole for Monday, July 13th, 2026. Under item 1, call to order 1.1, welcome and roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Salsky. Here. Berg. Here. Salentini. Here. Friedels.
Here.
Veen.
Here.
And President Sandy.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Under item 2, informational items 2.1, City of Grand Forks Strategic Priorities 26-27 and beyond. Mr. Phelan.
Hey, Council President Sandy and members of the Community Hall. I thought I would bust through some priorities, and I attached what we put together in 21 and 22, and I think you as City Council have made a lot of progress, and we're really thankful that as our governing board, you've allowed us to work on a lot of great projects. And some of them have been a little uncomfortable, but they've progressed the city quite well. So last week, I heard a really good quote from Reese Haas, who's the North Dakota Department of Water Resources Director, and he stated Dwight D. Eisenhower, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander, World War II, quote, and his quote was, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. And so if you ever work in city government, you get used to a lot of worthless plans. But I think in most of these things, we've gone to action planning and we've made a lot of terrific things happen. So I just want to share some of the things where we're at and where we're going and get your feedback along the way. This is the budget timeline, and starting next week, Monday on the 20th, and then the 27th of July, and then August 3rd, you're going to be really into the budget itself. So those things are coming near term. City operations, and these are things that obviously the mayor, his focus is on public safety. The first 5 items are all police department related, and then the next one, the fire department, the PSAP integration. So we really owe you an update on all the great things that are going on at the police department and the fire department, especially with the fire department and its integration with our 911 or PSAP center. And so we're wrapping up some of the construction activities at the police department building. We're integrating those two BCI agents with cybercrime. And then likely this fall, after the budget process is over, we'll set up a meeting where we can provide a run-through, a tour, and then also provide you a briefing on these things that I've noted here with the police department and also with PSAP, with both Chief Marcotte and Chief Friedman giving reports on that. The other two is the wastewater treatment plant expansion. That's been a quiet $100 million we've invested in. And so this is the year it will be in 27 where we're going to actually get it started up. And so it's one thing building something that's got to work and function well. The other thing, Council President Sandy, you brought this up, is that our Oakview Group, OVG agreement, our 10-year agreement is up in 27. So we'll have to seek some guidance from the City Council on how you want to move that forward. 10 years ago when we move forward, 10 plus years ago when we move forward, city staff like myself and Tangi Bovet and Maureen helped lead the RFP process. The Alaris Center Commission approved it, and then essentially the City Council signed on to it. So if you want to have it done like we're doing the scoreboard, we'll have to get your feedback on how you'd like us to proceed. But we'll start proceeding with that early next year. These are really 7 important strategic infrastructure developments that we're working on. And if you looked in 21 and 22, they were just kind of hopes that these things would be moving forward. And now we've gone to action on these 2 things. Obviously, this $80 million grade separation is a big deal. We've worked on it for a couple decades, and right now we're at the right place and time to move this project forward. It's an $80 million project. As you recall, we got good bids, and so we had $90 million budgeted. It came in around 80. Our cost share for this project is about $21 million of that $80 million. A lot of thank yous go out to the North Dakota DOT. They've taken ownership of this project and provided additional $20 million in funding to close that funding gap. So here's the North Dakota DOT and Governor Armstrong. This is going to be the big one that's going to come here over the next 4 years, and this is the interchange project. The federal government will pay for the interchange, and so essentially the federal government and the North Dakota DOT will pay for the green area, which is the interchange. The City of Grand Forks will be responsible for all the red areas, which is the interconnecting, the interchange, and you have approved starting on this project from 47th, this area that we've started. But when you look at your CIP next week, you're going to see a lot of city projects with this transportation network, getting this set up for the interchange to happen. So a lot of our funds, local funds from the $21 million for the underpass to include all these red highlighted roadways, a lot of our city funds are going to go towards those over the next 4 or 5 years. These are the other projects. We're going to do a lot of maintenance projects in 26 and 27, but these 3 projects are unique transportation projects. One is to help serve that industrial area that we got the EDA grant for up on 70th. This is 27th Avenue North, which is serving Agristo, and then we're going to do University Avenue. We're going to extend that final piece on University Avenue from Columbia to University Park. This is the other one that you're going to want to pay special attention. And Al Grasser used to be up here as a city engineer talking about this project, and you're going to hear a lot from Christian Danielson on this. Essentially, this is to provide some additional improvements on our southeast area of our city regarding our interior flood protection outside of the city, and then also going through the English Coulee area. So you're going to hear a lot about that. This is another partnered project, and thankfully right now the state of North Dakota, through the Department of Water Resources, has cost shares for flood protection projects like this. And so you can see this is a big deal. That's a $52 million improvement, of which we're going to be seeking $27 million in funding from the state of North Dakota. The same Reese Haas that I spoke of that was here last week, that's the department we're going to seek funding. So we really want to take a good view of this project. This is going to be funding that we haven't identified and how we're going to fund our cost share. So this is a really big deal for you as we move forward. We've talked about the Bakken East pipeline. There's 2 numbers that are really important in here. The state of North Dakota working with WBI, which is a Montana Dakota utility subsidiary. They've upsized the pipeline from 36 to 42 and then from 30 to 36. That's a big deal because we want to get additional natural gas to Grand Forks County. And you can see it's going to end here at Mapleton. And really what we're going to work with the state of North Dakota is to get a branch pipeline to Grand Forks County up here. Another option that we have is this is the Viking pipeline where we're currently served. Grand Forks is currently served with Canadian natural gas through this pipeline that comes from Canada. We can also backfeed this line through the Viking pipeline. Natural gas is kind of complicated in how they serve that, but this is a really big deal because this project will be in part spell a lot of our destiny, whatever gets built, and we want to make sure it just doesn't end up in Cass County. This is the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, and you've heard a lot about this. Mayor Buchenski and Councilmember Veen spent a lot of time on this along with city staff. This is a $1.4 billion supplementary water supply project. We're going to come back and give you some briefings this year on this particular project. Currently, right now, it's set up as a 75% state cost share, 25% local. Of that 25% local, we're about 17%. Fargo is about 65%, and there's about 18% that's smaller users. So we're a significant user of it. And as you recall, our 25%, we're currently funding through a Bank of North Dakota loan. That's a 40-year term loan at 2%, so it's a pretty good deal. But we're going to be bringing back to you right now. The state's got a governance study, and they're contemplating how to own and operate this project. Right now, we're recommending the city of Grand Forks and Fargo are recommending that this should be an option 3. The states did a study with Deloitte did a study, and option 3 would be have the state of North Dakota own the project. And then contract the operation of that. Currently, right now in statute, it would be the Garrison Diversion would own the project, and with the state providing the funding and also the locals providing the funding, including Grand Forks. So there's going to be a shift, and we're going to bring that to you. And so that'll be a big discussion. The other thing that we need to update you on is you've thankfully allowed us to hire an attorney, a water attorney from Colorado, and also some technical experts from Colorado to work on this. So we're going to be bringing back a lot of the work that we've done regarding our Red Lake water supply, and then our Thompson-Ocker water supply that we have in Lake Ashtabula. And so we're going to be bringing back some water models and kind of what our need for the project is. And we're going to be bringing back various agreements that we're working on, both the bulk water supply and then also how we're going to distribute this water within the basin. So lots of work we've been doing on this, and we've got to bring you back some details on this project. The other thing on this wastewater treatment plant, so when you think of the wastewater treatment plant, we renewed the existing wastewater treatment plant, which is an aerobic wastewater treatment plant. And the addition right over here, the two green areas, that's the 5 million gallons per day. That's an addition. This red area, we did not move forward. In time, when we move that forward, that's another 2.5 million gallons per day. And so the addition is more of a biological nutrient renewal system versus the aerobic. So these two are going to get combined. We went with the new design because we felt like it was going to give us better wastewater effluent quality, and with that system. So remember this system right here will serve the two industries I might speak of later. Northern Plains Nitrogen is going to take wastewater reuse, and also Epitome Energy is going to take wastewater reuse. So their main water supplies will be off the wastewater treatment plant. These are all the 7 housing and mixed use projects that you've approved over the last several years. And I did some math on these particular projects. And I think Brian Brooks usually says we should be building 250 apartment units per year. So if you add up all these 7 projects, you've approved 992. That's would be with Ray Richards. 992 projects. These units would be built over the next 4 years. Of those 992 units, 186 are rent or income restricted, or about 19% of those. Almost 20% are income restricted. So if you do that math over 4 years, that's about 248 a year. So we're about on what we thought our average would be. In addition, if you add up all those numbers, it's about $240 million in private investment to build all those developments. Here's the one that Council President Sandy has been working on, and that's really the single family housing. And right now, these numbers don't add up to 161, but Mr. Brooks, Brian, he added a few others that are over here in Discovery, but we have 161 vacant lots. And if we were to get back to where we should be building about 100 to 125 single family houses right now. And so right now, if you look at this number, we probably have maybe 1.5 to 2 years of inventory. And so when we bring back a report, we're really going to try to want to spur significant development on single-family lots, because we are, after all these years of building some larger developments, we are getting lower on the number of lots that we have. This has been the big game changer that you as elected officials, mayor and city council allowed us to move forward is with quality of life investments. And so if you look in 21, 22, we were looking at how can we combine the Children's Museum, BMX, and the Ultra Sports Complex with the Alaris Center. And lo and behold, about 5 years later, it's all coming together pretty well. So by 2028, all these will be put together in this district action plan, really supplementing what we have with the Alaris Center. Well, we're looking at it with the water plant, and the water plant's an almost 2-block area of redevelopment on our south side. And so the city council, you have allowed us to move forward with a request for qualifications that would narrow down the number of development groups that we want to work with, and then issue RFPs for those aligned or reduced down development groups. We haven't started that yet, but what we're planning on doing is getting some ideas from others. And so one tour we'd like to invite you along with is, and likely it's going to happen in September, we'll go down to Sioux Falls and look at some of their developments along their riverfront, along their greenway, for those that are interested, and meet with their city leaders, meet with their development community, and just get some further ideas before we ask you later this fall to move forward with an RFQ and an RFP. Really, this area, our hope, and I think when you see what Sioux Falls has done, they have $200 million developments that would be similar. So really, our goal should be in this area that it would be $100 to $200 million reinvestment in this area down at the forks of the river. What we've heard on this air service expansion is, our focus still is on Denver, but as there's been further discussions with United and others is that there's an option also for Chicago right now, but our focus has been Denver. We're supposed to hear later this fall regarding what our prognosis is. They still are positive and optimistic that the service is going to come to Grand Forks. And we are looking at a 2027 start, and it would likely be a summer of 27 start on this particular needed service in our community. Melanie's going to talk about the downtown Greenway Park development later in the agenda. Two mixed-use developments that we're working hard on is we heard in the headlines with this Odyssey Theater. We're still working with them. I know they said they're coming. We haven't gotten a lot of information, so we're probably in the hopeful stage on this one. The other one is Columbia Mall. It's probably the one, other than maybe air service, Columbia Mall is really a detractant in Grand Forks. And so we know that the Macy's building was purchased by local developers, and we really are encouraging the entire area, the mall itself, to be purchased. One of the challenges we're going to have in this area is I think in the future, whomever's here in the future, I think one of the mistakes that was made in this area is the infrastructure around the Columbia Mall is privatized. And so all the street, sewer, water, storm is all private. And you can about imagine after 50-year development what the shape of the infrastructure is, and not very good. And so I think for this to get redeveloped, it's going to take the city's all the tools that you have, from incentives and also infrastructure redevelopment in this area. So we're really hoping here in the next year or so that we can bring back a development project that we can move this forward, because it's the one chronic thing that we hear from people. But we need the private sector to want to help support us on this. If you took us back to 2014, 15, and Council President Sandy will remember this, and Council Member Veen, is that we were trying to open up industrial areas that are in blue, and we wanted to open them up not just because they were greenfield ready, but they would be infrastructure ready. And we've done that over the last several years, and we've opened up a lot of areas, whether that's been for Agristo. This is the water plant area. The business park is down here. And the one area is where Epitome Energy, Northern Plains Nitrogen, is in this area. We still have to get infrastructure in that area, underground and transportation. That's probably going to be a $30 to $40 million investment to get those support infrastructures ready in those areas. These are all those areas that I spoke of. And again, I did some math in this area and kind of what we're talking about in this area. This area right here, if you just take the direct jobs down to where the Grand Forks Business Park, I didn't add those up, but the direct jobs just from Cirrus all the way to Agristo, that's about 1,600 direct jobs in that area. The new jobs that are going to create it, and I counted up Agristo, Epitome, Northern Plains Nitrogen, and the biorefinery. That's about 530 new jobs in that area. And then if you just do the simple multiplier by 2, that'd be an additional 1,060 indirect jobs. So really we're really growing our industrial capacity, and when we talk about housing and quality of life, we're trying to be all things to these industries that want to add in here. And if you add up all those new industries that we're looking at, that's about $3.8 billion that could be invested in Grand Forks that we don't have today. We just had an audit review, and so when we sell bonds later this fall, generally Moody's is going to review us, and right now we have a AA2 stable rating, which is a good rating. And sometimes we compare ourselves with Fargo. So Fargo has a AA3, which is lower, and it's not considered stable. So you have a very good bond rating for the city of Grand Forks. And when you read a Moody's report, the important part are these entities. They'll mention the stability of the community and the growing part of this community but we have a foundation of an institutional presence, and that starts with the Grand Forks Air Force Base. The Grand Forks Air Force Base is in a really good place, and starting in 2005 with a BRAC, and we were realigned. It's quite extraordinary if you've been around here in this time that we're in this position. And so these are all the positive attributes that are going on in Grand Forks, and really more positives to come. we have a lot of thanks to give first Governor Hoven, who did a lot of great work while he was governor for the Grand Forks Air Force Base and now in Grant Sky and now is doing as our U.S. Senator. And this is his ecosystem when he speaks about Grand Forks and the Grand Forks Air Force Base. So when we do go out and visit the Pentagon here later this year, these are the things we'll be talking about, that you have a local community that will support Grand Forks Air Force Base missions and growth and all the things that we want to talk about, quality of life, housing, all these things that we want to enter with the city of Grand Forks. The thing with Altru Hospital is, again, they're another institutional presence that is in really great position, and U.S. City Council invested a little under $5 million in some of the off-site infrastructure. So when Altru decided that they were going to stay on their existing campus, it was a lot less expensive for the city to do that versus a greenfield. And so you guys allowed us to do some infrastructure investment in this area. And then finally, I know we're going to talk about the Ray Richards project, but the University of North Dakota, and obviously they're at really a growth mindset right now. They're an R1 institution. Their key academic missions, and if you read the Grand Forks Region EDC strategic plan, a lot of it surrounds the University of North Dakota. So we're very fortunate to have University of North Dakota in our community because we can play off many of their strengths. And tonight we're going to talk about one of their public-private partnerships this evening a little bit further. So with that, that's kind of where we're at. And I speak of Councilmember Salentini, hopefully over the next 2 years to 4 for you, that we can continue to make progress on this. And really what we see as city staff, you're our board of directors, and we're trying to do the very best we can to move the community forward, and we really rely upon you to provide us feedback along the way to make the very best decisions that we can. So with that, thank you, President Sandy.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Field? It's a great presentation. I think a lot of the things that we're looking at are very aspirational, significant heavy lifting in those items lifted. It's going to take the whole community getting on board. So thank you, Mr. Field.
Thank you.
Item 3, action items 3.1, Mod Apartments LLC, payment in lieu of taxes. Mr. Phelan.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Oh,
President Sandy,
sorry, Mr.
probably,
Gustin.
I'll probably take this one. This is a matter that's already been approved, but the issue is, as I was developing or preparing the development agreement, I was using Enclave Property Management, which was listed as the project operator on the application. I think there was a prior staff report that mentioned that the operator or the developer was to be Enclave Development LLC. As I was developing the agreement and sending it to the development team, they advised me that they had created a separate entity, Mod Apartments LLC, which is a Delaware LLC, to own and operate and to develop this particular parcel. The terms of the development agreement could result in triggering defaults if it was somebody other than Enclave Property Management signing the agreement, developing it, because of the way this thing was originally approved. And so we thought it appropriate to request and seek approval from the council to change it to Mod Apartments LLC as being the developer. In the staff report, when I drafted this last Friday, at that time, Mod Apartment LLC was registered in Delaware, but had not received a certificate of authority in North Dakota to transact business in North Dakota. Since that time, I do have the certificate of authority from Mod Apartments LLC that they're authorized to transact business in North Dakota, which would be required for this development. One thing I do want to point out is, and I know you had included that in this provision and other pilot agreements where it's kind of a clawback. We've got a provision in this development agreement that calls for the developer to maintain the property for a period as long as if it's a 5-year pilot, they have to, if it lasts the full 5 years, they have to maintain that property as something other than tax exempt. There's some exceptions. One would be they can seek change in valuation. that would otherwise be allowable, challenging the assessment value that you're allowed to do, any other property owner would be allowed to do, or if the city council would happen to allow for another tax incentive after this 5-year pilot period. In addition, if there is this change in ownership or change in use of the property that would make it exempt, there are now terms within this agreement that allow us to recover the tax incentive dollars that they enjoyed for that 5-year period of time from the developer, the party that acquires the property, or from the proceeds that the developer may receive. We also then record something with the real estate records to place people on notice of these default provisions. So I wanted to note that, but again, our recommendation is to simply approve Mod Apartments LLC as being the developer on the pilot development agreement. Note that I believe the closing for Mod Apartments to actually acquire the real estate where this development is going to occur in the next several days. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gosted. Anyone have any comments? Yes, Ms. Wasowski?
Yes, what did you call it, Mr. Gossett? A certificate of authority?
Yes, it's from the North Dakota Secretary of State's office. It was issued today, July 13th of 2026.
And it was issued today for what we want to change the name to, correct?
Correct.
The mod?
Mod Apartments LLC.
The mod. I get, but it was always supposed to be mod?
It was not because this entity was just recently created. I think the Enclave had anticipated that they were going to create another entity when they made the application, and they used Enclave Property Management as the applicant for the pilot application.
Okay, so just now they're going back and they set up a new LLC out of Delaware, and now they want us to go and change the name on the pilot because it just got approved today then.
As I was developing the agreement, I went back and looked at the pilot application and the staff reports, and it noted Enclave Property Management. I sent the proposed development agreement to them, and then they advised me that this entity was being created for the very purpose of developing this property.
Shouldn't they have had that before?
They
I
probably-
mean, I don't know really the rules, but you would think before you come and ask for a pilot that you would have the LLC set up instead of getting approved for a pilot and now, oh, we're going to change. I find that a little bit odd. Another question though, is this the same situation that happened at Franklin on 4th? Didn't we so that's the exact same thing.
It's not precisely the same thing, but we were trying to avoid that situation from rising again.
Oh, okay. Okay. I guess I think that sounds a little bit fishy, but I don't agree with these types of apartment buildings qualifying for a pilot. So I will be voting no, regardless of what they decide their name is. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wasowski. Further comments? Yes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mike. There's a second. Ms. Berg? Mr. Friedels with the motion, second Berg. Further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Motion carries. Salentini and Wasowski dissent. Thank you. Item 4, discussion items. 4.1, reappointments to the Historic Preservation Commission. Anybody have any problems with the mayor's? Thank you, Mr. Veen, second by Wasowski. Further comment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. I'm going to ask to be recused from item 4.2. This
President
reason.
Sandy,
Yes, Mr. Weigel.
I'd make a motion to allow you to vote with the intention of voting against it.
Thank you,
second.
Mr. Weigel. Motion second by Osowski. So this is a reconstruction of a street project that will have decorative lighting. So a very small portion of the job. Prior to my son purchasing his company, they did the lighting in Fort Badman in those decorative light towers. I don't know if he'll get hired to do it or not. I'm just figure I'll be asked to recused anyway. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor of my recusal signify by saying no, sorry, of allowing me to vote. Everybody, thank you. Everyone signify by saying aye to allow me to vote. Signify by saying nay to allow me not to vote.
Nay.
Thank you so much. I'm recused. Mr. Veen, if you would handle 4-2, please.
Okay, any other questions on this subject? Chris, Mr. Danielson, do you want to make a quick presentation? Or
I can run through it quick. These are just a couple standard downtown or NDDOT development agreements that we go through with each of our NDDOT projects. The first one's a construction maintenance agreement that just defines who's going to pay for the project, what the splits are, and then who's going to maintain it once it is constructed. The other one is a preliminary engineering agreement, which just says that any of the engineering fees that we accumulate throughout the project, if the city ends up terminating the project or substantially changing it, those fees are then owed to the DOT once that happens as part of the project. So these are pretty standard agreements that we go through with all these federally funded projects. And if it wasn't clear, this is the project right out in front of City Hall here.
okay, any additional questions?
I have some.
Priscilla?
Read the agenda item.
I'll read the agenda. Okay. 4.2 is the cost participation and maintenance agreement and preliminary engineering reimbursement agreement for project number 8981, reconstruction of North 4th Street, 2nd Avenue North to University Avenue. Sowski.
Yeah, I thought the last time we talked about kind of these fancy lights that we were done buying them, but we're going to put more out here? And how many more? And at what point are we going to be done buying the fancy lights?
So Councilmember Brzezowski, I believe the last time that this was discussed, there was an agreement or a decision from the council to purchase the lights for the intersection right out here at Second, and 2 additional lights were purchased at that time that we now have as a city sitting in reserve. So I don't believe that we have to purchase any more lights for this project. We already have them if we choose to use them again. But as far as purchasing new ones for this project, I don't know if there's any intent to purchase new ones. And as far as moving forward from this project, that would be another discussion at that time.
Great. So we have 2 spares.
I believe that is the case, and I think Ryan's confirming here in the back that yes.
Okay, perfect. I move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veen. That motion carried 6-0 with myself being recused. Thank you. Item 4.3, development agreement, project numbers 9129 sanitary sewer, 9130 water main, and 9131 storm sewer for Grand Valley Second Amendment. Good evening, Mr. Lieberman.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the committee. City engineering was approached by a developer, Prairie Real Estate, about installing some additional infrastructure, underground utilities in the Grand Valley area. This is along Cades Drive and South 20th Street. It's a relatively small requirement, and they're looking to do it pretty quick. So they've requested to privately install this under a 3-way agreement. What you see in the staff report is a standard 3-way agreement form. The developer would be responsible for paying the construction cost, paying for the engineering cost, and reimbursing the city for inspecting the project. We would still maintain control over the design as far as it being approved to be within city standards, and we would ultimately inspect the project. So we're requesting council's approval tonight to enter into this 3-way agreement.
Great. Questions on 4.3, Ms. Wasowski?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's great that they want to kind of do it themselves. I do have a question though, because Mr. Phelan brought up earlier today about Columbia Mall and how, like, are they going to own the infrastructure then around there? And like, are we going to have problems with it in the future, or?
In this particular instance, the developer would construct it, and once it's accepted, turn it over to become public infrastructure. So the city would own it and operate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further comment or questions?
Move approval.
Moved by Berg, second by Friedhoff. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And Mr. Lieberman, item 4.4 is very similar, correct? This is development agreement for projects 9132 sanitary sewer, 9133 water main, and 9134 storm sewer for Crary's 13th edition.
I move approval.
Thank you. Moved by Osowski, second by Berg. Further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. Bid awards, 4.5 bid award project 9124, Public Works roof replacement, and 4.6 bid award project 9125, Public Works HVAC replacement. Good evening, Ms. Lipsch.
President Sandy, committee members. The first item is to replace the roof at the Public Works facility. It has reached the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced with every new rain event. We seem to find new leaks. So we did go to put out an RFP, and the low bidder was Quality Trusted Commercial Construction and Roofing out of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. And the amount of their bid was $799,580. So the request before you is to approve them to construct this project.
I move approval. They obviously need a new roof.
Moved by Osowski, second by Berg. Further comment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
The next item on the HVAC units, kind of a similar situation. They've reached the end of their useful life. Parts are becoming harder and harder to obtain. And so we went to bid, and Seal Input is the low bid in the amount of $103,690 for the two HVAC systems at the Public Works Facility building.
Thank you. Local contractor.
Move approval.
Moved by Berg, second by Veen. Thank you. Further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 4.7, Downtown Gateway and Greenway Project Engineering Services Agreement, Project 8525.3. Ms. Barbie.
Good evening, Council President Sandy, members of the committee. Tonight, the intent is to give you a brief update on the project with Houston Engineering. Kelby Laxdal, as well as Bruce Niedermeyer, will be on to share some information on the project. I just want to give a little bit of history. Back in August of 2022, we brought forward an agreement to work with RDG on a downtown master planning document. The intent there was to look at the facility itself. It had been, over 20 years old, and we just wanted to look at if we did anything what the community wanted to do. So then in February, in 24, we actually brought that master plan back and talked to the council about what the intent was. And we wanted to continue to look at opportunities there and funding. So then in April, we realized that there was an opportunity to apply for a grant, the ORLP, which is through the National Park Service, but administered through the North Dakota Parks and Rec. In August of 2025, we brought back that agreement and council approved it. And then we approved an engineering services agreement back in January of 25. So at that point in time, we just began the preliminary design for the project. Tonight, we're going to ask for continuing that final design, bidding, and construction oversight of the project, but wanted to update you on where we're at. Kelby will be next.
Thanks.
Good evening. Thanks for being here.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. As Melanie said, I'm Kelby Laxdal with Houston Engineering, project manager for this project. And with me and virtually is Bruce Niedermeyer. Bruce, you want to wave to the folks?
I do. Hi everyone. Thanks for having me virtually. Bruce Niemeyer, I'm a landscape architect and lead designer. I'm with RDG Planning Design. So we did the master plan and are now working with Kelby on the final design here.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, we'll kind of go through a little bit of the history like Melanie kind of talked about there and let you know kind of where we've been, kind of where we're going with the project. So this was the master plan kind of layout here that was put back out and approved back in like 2004. You can see we've got phase 1, 2, and 3. We're really just talking about phase 1 tonight. This is what was approved through the ORLP kind of grant process and kind of what's been approved and what we've been working to kind of clear environmentally for the city and getting that funding in place and keeping everything rolling. So this was the original master plan back in 2004 or 2024, sorry. Just a little bit more clarity on where it's at. So we've got the Sorley Bridge, we got Demers Avenue, Town Square on the obelisk, just so everybody's kind of oriented to where we're talking about here today. So what we've kind of been working through the last 2 years-ish and even further than that with the master planning was getting a lot of public feedback, a lot of public engagement, from the community. That's what this space is meant to be for. It's meant to kind of bring everybody to downtown. We have a lot of really cool things downtown, but not a lot for, families of all ages kind of a thing. So this will be something that'll be really neat for, all ages. So just to kind of look back through it a little bit, 2022 and 23, we did some master planning events and kind of some in-person kind of hangouts and kind of get some ideas from people. The 2024 Potato Bowl Parade, we kind of promoted the project through that, and we threw out some little potatoes with QR codes to get people kind of engaged with the project. We got some good feedback there that Bruce will talk about in a little bit. We also did some steering committee meetings that were started with the master planning and that whole process. And then we kind of carried through here through our preliminary design. We were also here last July at the COW to kind of talk about some stuff, kind of give you an idea of where we're at with the first 6 months since our original design had kind of started off on a preliminary design. And then some social pinpoint stuff that we've been doing. It used to be called social pinpoint. Now it's just social point for anybody that's kind of been around on it. But basically, these are a couple pictures from last year. We were kind of hanging out with the public, getting some good feedback from people. A lot of kids kind of giving us some feedback, which was fun. What do kids want to do down here? How do we want to play? And also, the parents, what can we do while we're down here too, which is kind of neat. So we had a really good event here just about a year ago, to the day. Getting some good feedback from folks. So with that, I'm going to let Bruce talk a little bit about how that feedback kind of has been fostering the design and kind of feeding us here.
Great, Kelby, thank you. So obviously at the farmers market, we shared a number of things, background, the master plan in general, overall schedule and the exciting news of the funding, and a number of images and refined plans to give people something to react to see where their interest levels were for how this space could really be developed. So next we'll see that we also did that online. So that Social Point website that Kelby mentioned, this was kept active after the farmers market. So we knew we could hit a larger audience, not just the folks that happen to be walking by that day, but really gauge a number of folks in the community. There's a great uptick in participation that following week after the farmers market. And that's when it was most prevalent on social media as well. The next two slides we'll have are some of the questions that we asked regarding the Red River in general. We knew, obviously, being on the Greenway and connected directly to the river, that it was a point of inspiration, and thinking about what the public really associates with the Red River is really important. And then next, we knew that a large component of this, especially from the grant funding, was for play, thinking about an adventure playground and what that could really mean for this space and connecting to downtown and the users. And so had some fun activities to help kids really get engaged and families enjoy the time there and get some good content out of them. But on the next slide, we'll see as a kind of a summary of that content. If we think about the Red River inspiration, people, of course, connect back to the bridges and structures, the String Bridge Foundation that exists in the Red River today, history and form in general, activities, of course, fishing and hiking and bird watching, and then, of course, the natural ecosystems, the flora and fauna that we're all familiar with in the river. And then with the types of play, it was amazingly prevalent that people really want to activate the levee and think about how that can become an amenity and not just an edge for downtown, while of course keeping it the safe structure that it has to be, including natural elements in their fun, challenging users of all ages, not just one small group, providing diverse play opportunities, and of course being creative about our natural context for the site. As we think about those things, the next slide shows kind of nature-inspired design drivers, if you will. And we saw this from the previous plan, but the idea of the river forms and the ecosystems of North Dakota really influencing the overall layout and design of the space. And then things that are smaller and more nuanced, like the animals, whether that's a native turtle or the western meadowlark, we'll see how those kind of establish on the updated plan, as well as natural materials, and thinking about also what can take a flood, right? We know that the Greenway will be flooded at times, and we need to be honest and thinking about the maintenance of those systems. So next we have the master plan and of course the phase 1 refinement, but that's not our focus today. The next slide is actually the updated plan. And so within this updated plan, we're still in that same zone that Kelby highlighted earlier. And what we can really see translate on this plan is those things that I mentioned regarding the river, regarding play. So a few key elements include the meandering paths, kind of this river meander, if you will, the levee integration, making sure that it's not just a backdrop, but really part of the overall system in a safe manner. Maintained open space, especially as we think about the connection down to the obelisk and to the edge of the river, and how much green space we can maintain while also activating this. And of course, as we're adding impervious surfaces to this, thinking about the stormwater management, we're right next to the river. We don't just want to sheet flow in there, but treat it on site. Last but certainly not least, with the adventure play component of this is really unique play experiences. And so in the fall and through the spring, we have been coordinating with a custom and unique play designer, play structure designer, Landscape Structures Inc., which is out of Minnesota. And we did issue an RFQ process to engage them and bring them on the team because we knew that was going to be such an important element. So the next images we'll go through are a series of three-dimensional views. I'll try to frame these up a little bit for you, but there's a number of them, so we'll march through them pretty quickly. We can, of course, translate how that site plan and those meandering walks frame up these different rooms that we see on the site here. The levee is, of course, in the background. We see the blue roof of the stage at the town square, too, in the upper right corner, so that hopefully kind of helps ground you. In essence, there really is a trail that continues past this space, although it integrates in on the edge to allow bicyclists and others who just want to move through to get there. But obviously, we set up a number of experiences within the space as well. Next image shows one of the most unique components of this, which is a play structure that is in the form of a turtle. And so we're really thinking about how this harkens back to those natural elements that we're thinking about with the Red River, but is a very playable, multifaceted fixture that we've collaborated with Landscape Structures Incorporated to design and really find a place on this site that is unique while offering those playful components. Next, we'll go into a area that is more traditional play equipment, right, with swings and climables. This is a quote-unquote 2 to 5-year-old space. If you're familiar with playgrounds, they are traditionally divided between 2 to 5-year-old and 5 to 12-year-old. And you'll see that exist in these kind of organization of rooms, if you will, these spaces and how they're divided from one another and not just in one big, huge area of flat space. Next, we move on to see the center plaza space, if you will, an area that has a pavilion to protect folks from the weather. Also, things like a countertop for bringing in crock pots and electricity, and this would be a reservable and or rentable space that could have 50 to 75 people under it comfortably, and of course that could flow out into the plaza space as needed. But obviously we see it connects back to the river idea as well, formed after specifically a sandbar and the creations that we see in a meandering river that moves over time. Next, we have another kind of playful moment as we think about integrating more directly on the edge of the levee. And this is a series of nests that are constructed out of timbers. And this is a harken back to the Western meadowlark that build its nests on the ground in much of North Dakota's grasslands. And so thinking about one of those kind of scientific moments along with the turtle and other components here that really help people understand the importance of their site and their adjacency to the river. As we transition to the next one, we see a larger play space here, some more traditional play with swings and spinning components, climables, and also a very sincere integration with the edge of the levee. So things like footings and different components of that have been really well balanced between the engineering of the site and the FEMA and Army Corps reviews. But as we see in the distance, there's a circular form there that does recall even the swing bridge foundation that's in the Red River today. So we're thinking about how we can integrate all those spaces together and while meeting the needs of a safe flood wall system. As we're up on top of that levee, looking back, we can of course see the Sorley Bridge in the distance. The river is beyond some of the trees that are planted here. But this is really one of those moments that we felt the public was really asking for, an opportunity to engage on top of the levee into the system of play experiences and coming into the site from that direction as well as from Demers. Next, of course, a very important element on all of this is lighting. So whether it be something like internal lighting on the turtle structure, which is planned by that custom relationship with Landscape Structures, and then of course pathway lighting that illuminates a safe space for folks as we bridge into those early evening hours and think about the holistic experience for all. So that wraps it up for the 3D views, but Kelby's going to take it away on some additional engineering elements as well.
All right, thanks, Bruce. Yeah, Bruce gets to do the fun stuff. We got more of the bookkeeping stuff to talk about. So kind of walk you through some of the preliminary engineering stuff that we've been up to the last year or so. Kind of getting through a few of the environmental clearances and that sort of a thing. So usually not a whole lot you find on cultural resources here in a developed part of town like this. Not really any different here. What we've outlined is kind of that phase 1 area in red. Again, that's been, an area was built before we flooded, we've redeveloped, and, it's all been torn up. So not a huge surprise that not a lot's been found here as far as cultural resources go or archaeology, type finds. We have kind of cleared phase 1 area with this now through SHPO and even local historical society as well. We've talked to them and got some good correspondence going and things to watch out for. So good news here is that everything in our phase 1 area is cleared archaeologically. Likewise, something that we always look for when we get into a project like this on the environmental side would be the wetlands. We're looking at any sort of resources that we don't want to incur upon or we don't want to, kind of develop on top of and try and avoid, because there's usually a mitigation process that goes with that, or banks and that sort of a thing. So again, good news here. We've only identified a few different wetlands, very small acreage, obviously along the river. We have other waters throughout the entire length of the project, but essentially wetlands, again, are going to be a non-impact item for us, which is great. We expect to be down at the river with what Bruce kind of mentioned, some of our stormwater management. We'll have some ponds, we'll have some down, kind of some outflows down to the river to get rid of our stormwater and that stuff after it's treated. But likely we won't have any impacts to these wetlands that we can tell. We're kind of staying away from those and some of that natural wooded area as it is already. So got some more good news on that front right now. So one of the big players for this is obviously FEMA. We're building inside the floodway, inside the floodplain. The Grand Forks Flood Protection System is one and the same in that case. So just a quick kind of breeze through on what we're doing with FEMA. We're going through the CLOMAR process, so a conditional letter of map revision. Basically, we're proposing to build in the floodway and floodplain. That affects the mapping, potentially affects, people upstream of this if we're flooding. Talk a little bit about the floodway and floodplain, little HEC-RAS modeling, a couple things. Since we are inside the flood protection system, we're affecting both communities. So essentially we're mapping things in North Dakota and in Minnesota and keeping everybody kind of involved in that on the East Grand Forks side as well. With that HEC-RAS model, we take the old model that's basically the effective model after the Corps has built all of their works. So it's the most recent model. We've updated a lot of cross sections to that to make sure that we aren't inundating anybody and adding any extra water or flooding upstream. And then kind of a bonus part of this process is we were able to make sure that both sides of the river had updated correspondence and design record documentation with FEMA and the Corps and everybody. So it was kind of a good refresher that, no surprise, not everybody gets the same information at the federal level. Some people have some documents, some have others. So now they'll have all the same information. So that's good. Just real quick on why this is so important for FEMA is that we're not only in the floodplain, which would be like that broader area, kind of on the outside of the riverbanks, but we're also like directly in the floodway. And so with our levee systems in place, we're in the floodplain and floodway the whole way. So essentially we have an impact to that area. We're got to make sure that we don't have any significant impacts. So in our case for the Greenway, kind of what we've got going on here when we surveyed it, water's level is pretty normal. This is just kind of a quick little graphic to show you where 96, 2009, 97 floods are in comparison with the levee and kind of where our work is here in the scope of phase 1. So with that, to make sure that we are capturing everything on site, we actually did a drone LiDAR flight for this back in 2024. Got a really nice high image and LiDAR survey through this area, which as you can see now, kind of all the green swirls and everything that Bruce was showing, that was all finished. This is kind of the legwork and the backbone to get there. So this is all the 3D line work and basically corridor modeling that we're doing to ensure that we aren't inundating anything and being able to punch a bunch of cross sections through here. So kind of a cool CAD view of what we're kind of looking at. What that kind of all results in is we model it, we cut a bunch of new cross sections, and you can't obviously read any of this, but there's a lot of information here. Basically what our process has been is to update these maps to prove that we're not inundating anybody upstream. And just a quick little kind of site close-up of what we're looking at there. So we are changing some things in the phase 1 area as FEMA would be concerned, but good news is basically almost theoretically zero. So that's awesome. What we have here again on the right, you can't really read that, but where we added cross sections at the playground areas and through our FEMA and HECRAS modeling, essentially we only have one cross section that had theoretically less than 1/100th of an inch or 1/100th of a foot rise. So that's basically an 1/8 of an inch. So we're proposing to FEMA that we're not impacting anything. We've provided that statement to them already and they're in review of that right now. So basically what we're building is not going to impact anybody upstream. We're not going to flood anybody. We're not going to cause any undue stress to, upstream communities. So again, some more good news for the engineering side of the project. The graph on the left, essentially what we have is it's a lot of different lines, but would be kind of an overlay of all the flood protection system elements at the top. The kind of middle yellow line would be our minimum freeboard requirements. So not only are we protected by the base flood, we're also protected with additional if we go over the top of that. And then that lower blue line is basically what the post-project 100-year water elevation is going to be from the HECRAS model. So essentially everything's coming out and checking out as far as we have freeboard and everything. So we're not, doing anything to the levee that'll be detrimental to anybody. So with FEMA, we're in our second 90-day review process right now. So we're waiting to hear back from them after our original submittal. So we'll keep working with those folks and getting some information. The next step, once we are through with FEMA, or basically kind of towards the finish line, is getting into it with the Corps of Engineers. We've had a preliminary 408 permit kickoff. Surprisingly, they were pro-project right off the bat, and they thought it looked really cool. So that was our biggest takeaway from it, was that we have to be good stewards of the levee protection system. We don't want to create any undue stress or basically cause any concern for the flood protection system to fail. So a couple of quick just snippets of what we've provided to FEMA and to the Corps for just some of our preliminary engineering. Essentially, we're adding fill to both sides of the levee, kind of where Bruce was showing some of those views on top of the levee, kind of looking around. So that'd be pretty much the only impact to the levee we're going to have here. We're not going to put any foundations or carve up the levee or anything like that. It's mostly up and over the top, which we have in a bunch of spots in town already, in a lot of our greenway paths. So the big kicker here with the Corps is basically we have probably a 4-month review process. So we're trying to get to that 65% plan submittal as soon as possible so that we can still get this thing bid later this year. Kind of working towards. So looking at schedule, a couple of things. So as Melanie and Bruce kind of talked about, this has kind of been 4 years in the making to this point. We're basically all the way through to this We Are Here line where we're through pretty much preliminary design. The next stretch that we're going to be looking at hard here in the next 4 to 5 months is essentially final design and plan production. And then we'd be looking at getting into bidding and construction through next year. So the thought is right now, if we get things bid in late November, early December, we'll be able to get through construction through 27 with the hopes of finishing everything off in 28 should it need to go a little bit longer. But we'll make sure that pretty much everything that needs to happen that first year is taken care of. So with that, that's kind of where we're heading. And thank you for the opportunity to work on this project and present tonight and everything. So with that, we can stand for any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, Ms. Wazowski, I know you do.
Yeah. Did you acknowledge me then? Is it my turn?
Yes, Ms.
Thank you.
Wazowski, yes.
Thank you. I have a lot of comments first, and then I have questions, just so you know. First off, we just spent $100 million on fun stuff with our All True Sports Center. We're going to be paying that off for a long time. So I have a lot of concerns about, we did receive a $3.4 million grant, but it is a 1-to-1 match. And so the additional $3.4 million is going to come out of our flood protection fund. One thing that we just kind of heard today, which concerns me, is are we not looking for money to help with the flood protection down south? So can this money be used to help with that project over there?
These funds can't be used for that project. Maybe on the financing side, maybe Maureen can go over how we propose to fund this, because we know that you and others on council wanted to protect those flood protection funds. So we came up with an alternative strategy that maybe she can go over.
Yes, thank you, Todd. President Sandy, Ms. Osowski, members of the committee. So what was approved in the budget and what continues to be part of the presentation of the budget next week was that plan of using our Fund 4154, which is the flood control, flood protection capital project fund, to upfront our share of this, and then it would be paid back from the economic development sales tax. So it would come from there originally, but it would all be replenished to be available for other uses. But we also do have, which you will see as part of the budget presentation, our outlook on capital projects for flood protection. So it's all incorporated in there. So yes, it does have the plan that the upfront, but it would be reimbursed and replenished in whole.
How long would it take to replenish that $3.4 million?
Currently, we have it structured where it's a 20-year payback, but we could look at condensing that as well. But right now, we have it in there as a 20-year.
Okay. Another question I have. So today, like, we've already given you $590,000, correct? And today you are asking for an additional $393,000. So, I mean, that puts us over $1 million. Is this being taken off of the $7 million then for the project, or so, and then is the project just really going to be $6 million?
Member Osowski, the total project budget is about 7 million at 6.9 million. That includes the design that we're talking about tonight.
Okay.
So that's all reimbursable and was included in our proposal to National Park Service.
Okay, perfect. You know, I want to make sure that you don't touch our little statue with the levels of the floods each year. I saw it was in the presentation though, so thank you very much for not really touching that. I know a lot of people in this room probably aren't from Grand Forks, but I remember my home being destroyed by the flood of '97, and I think it's really important that that stays a part of our community. I've said these things before. I have a lot of concerns with us building infrastructure on that side of our flood protection. You know, from the cleaning to the upkeep, you know, sometimes it floods multiple times a year. And how do we plan on maintaining and paying for upkeep in this space? Also, he spoke about a rentable area. I mean, it might be rented once in a while, but I don't think we're gonna, you know, we're probably gonna still be in the red, even if we're renting out our space. So like, who's gonna manage, you know, taking reservations for that? Who's gonna clean up? Who, like, after the flood, who's gonna take care of this property? And how much is that gonna cost a year?
So Councilmember Osowski, the plan would be to incorporate it within our 5470 budget, which is part of our flood protection greenway maintenance budget. Facilities like this normally are pretty easy to take care of in the sense that, you know, you purchase the capital items that last a good 20 to 30 to 40 years. That's what we've experienced with the systems that we have in the Greenway right now, like Riverside Park is an example, Lincoln Drive Park. We built it quite a bit on the higher ground with the intent of knowing that we don't want it to flood that often. We know that that's a possibility, but just like those other features in Riverside Park, Lincoln Drive Park, they do have flooding from time to time, and then we're able to clean them up fairly quickly. We do either in-house, we work with our streets department. As you know, Kim Greendahl retired this last year, and we were able to incorporate a lot of those duties and responsibilities just by what we do throughout the city. So street department helps, park district helps where they can. And then we do have contractors that we hire when we need to get stuff cleaned up right after a flood. The community knows that this space is floodable, but they're not very patient when that area floods and they still want to continue to use it. So sometimes we reach out to our mowing contractors and we'll ask them to assist in some areas if need be. But for the most part, most stuff is done in kind with our existing facilities and within our budget.
So do you know, does anybody have an estimate though on how much money per year? I mean, I understand, you know, like the statues and stuff, they're easily rinsed off, you know, but we're talking about electrical maintenance down there. We're also, I heard him mention something about water treatment. And so, I mean, is that a whole new system that we're going to put on that side of the flood wall?
Once again, that's a stormwater management system. So it's just an internal drainage where the
Okay.
water is being cleaned up itself. So it's more of an educational component and requirement with constructing a space of this size. I don't have an actual dollar amount that it takes to maintain each specific park within the Greenway because we're able to do it with so many different resources. So our electrical department assists us with the electricity in those areas. It's part of the time that they spend and the resources that we currently have. So no additional staff is being hired to do these jobs. It's just what we're able to do with the existing personnel we have in all the different departments.
So one project or one thing that you did bring up was even like Riverside Park, you know, I mean, that infrastructure was there before the flood. And I've heard, you know, there's been multiple issues with that area. And so I don't understand why then we're going to continue to build on that side of the flood wall. And so is the whole thing just going to be completely submergible? Or I mean, because there's already issues with the things that we had before the flood of 97. I'm constantly hearing about how they have to be cleaned up and how they have to be maintained and how we have no money for this. And now here we are trying to put more stuff on that side of the flood wall. So are we going to have money to maintain all these spaces? And I guess I just don't really understand that at all.
I guess in particular, in this situation, the areas where we chose to put the play structures and different things were in the neighborhoods where it made the most sense, where we were on higher ground. They're floodable materials. So if indeed they were inundated, and that's part of working with the Army Corps of Engineers as well as FEMA, is that they don't want us to put something in there that isn't going to survive those situations. This area in particular, downtown, was chosen because it met the criteria of that grant at the time. There was a Justice 40 initiative, so that area is an underserved part of our community. And so that's one of the reasons why it actually, Grand Forks was able to apply for it. There wasn't other cities in the state of North Dakota that had met that qualification. So we're not always looking to put stuff in there that's going to be floodable, but this is an opportunity to develop what we've already got within the Greenway because of the opportunity of the funding available through the National Park Service. And the state, North Dakota Parks and Rec, is quite excited about the development going on here. Right now, it's just but it's an open green space. This will allow more opportunity for education and play, outdoor creativity. So it's to serve that part of the community as well as the rest of the community that utilizes the Greenway in that space.
So one more question. So this is just phase one, and we already got $1 million into this guy. So how much money is phase one? Is it going to take up the entire grant? And I mean, is there even going to be a phase two, or is this just going to be the whole $7 million?
The whole $7 million is for phase one of the project. There are other components, phase two and phase three, which we could look at funding if there's a desire from the community to do that. We've also talked internally about there could be funding for other things within the Greenway that may need funding, because that is available again, but it just is for certain components like the recreation.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add a little bit to some of your flooding questions real quick too? Just to kind of help paint that picture of why we got to the area that we are. So this is some additional flood data that's taken at the USGS gauge downtown, right on the downstream side of the Sorley. And the area that we're talking about in phase one and the elevations at which we're constructing the park has only been touched by floodwaters 8 times in the last 143 years. So thankfully, it floods very little up in that higher area. I mean, it does get there at times, but this would be a little bit more of an overlay of what some of the phase 2 and 3 pieces are. But essentially, phase 1 gets touched once every 17 to 18 years, give or take. When it does get flooded, the nice thing about it is that it's kind of up on that outer skirts of the floodplain. So we're talking like 1 to 2 feet per second for velocity versus the middle of the channel, which is more like 7 to 8. So it's a lot less destructive up in that area too. So think of it a lot more as a slow fill and kind of meandering water than a really gushing water that would happen down the middle of the stream. So that would be, kind of play to that idea that we won't get as much damage up in that area too, and keeping it kind of high and dry per se. So just part of that, and a couple other pictures that help maybe depict that. This would be the 97 flood of what basically would have touched everything. 2011, a little more recent, where we got up to the flood, protection system to a degree. Excuse me. And then in 2019, we got where this would barely touch the phase one area, basically. That'd be like a little bit of inundation time, but these are all based on peak flows touching that area essentially. So short duration typically, but not that many times in the last 140-ish years. Just a little more information on that.
Yeah, I thank you for showing me that. I mean, I understand our floodplain, but there is a reason why we have spent so much money protecting our city, because it was very traumatic to what happened to the citizens of Grand Forks in 97 when a bunch of people lost their homes. And so I mean, that levee is very important to our city. And to me, it just doesn't make sense why we want to put, well, now $6 million on that side of our flood protection. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osowski. Good questions. Yes, Mr. Veen?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sandy. A couple of questions. I mean, I think the concept of what you've shown here has been really great. I mean, it's nice to be able to make better use of that area. But I do have a few questions about how we would go about being able to do that. Your layout was mainly for playgrounds and much of that. How compatible is it with the town square? Because a lot of that area was previously used for overflow from the town square. And at one time, we had talked about moving that away, but it seemed to be when we had large events, the town square area was a go-to location for putting up the additional booths and other uses.
Yeah, and so to answer that question a little bit, with the phase plan 1, 2, and 3 that Bruce's team had put together back in a couple years ago here, phase 3 would be a reimagining of that town square to open things up. As far as the overflow goes, we kind of developed it where we had a little more green space closer to Demers and the Sorley Bridge before, and then kind of as we stepped into that, let me get to that guy here, Bruce. So we've kind of went through a right sizing exercise, kind of looking at the cost expectations of the project, and the master plan was, what can we possibly do, right? Kind of big thinking, big ideas, and then it's kind of like, okay, now bring it back to reality, kind of bring the pace down a little bit, bring the size down a little bit. So we kind of squish things a little bit closer to Demers to really get a little bit more engagement with that. So we do lose a little bit of that overflow area for events and that sort of a thing, but we did keep it to the east between that and the railroad tracks. The idea was to get the playground elements away from the railroad more so for, child safety and that sort of a thing, but still maintaining a suitable amount of green space over there. And as we've kind of looked at, the design has changed a little bit as far as levee access goes. Right now, we're proposing essentially from town square back up and over one time. We did have some closer to the flood wall opening here at BNSF before, but again, we're trying to kind of keep away from steering kids towards the tracks in that area. So
I think, did you mention potentially some fill on the levee hand side? And obviously we have soil stability problems here. Has that already been addressed? The soil stability that it can handle the additional fill that you're talking about?
Yep. So we worked through, and we basically, since we're going to have to bring in a boring contractor anyways, Braun Intertech came in and bored the site for us. We did a couple here on phase 1, phase 2 area, and also we did one across in East Grand Forks as well, just because there's a potential on phase 2 for a pedestrian bridge on that side. So with that, we're working with them. Obviously we'll be talking to the Corps as well about slope stability and adding fill on both sides and making sure we're not creating any slip failures or anything like that. We're also going to try and keep any foundations that go in. So the one that really kind of shows it when we're looking out towards here in the playground piece, we're keeping that main platform away from the toe of the levee. So we're not incurring that one-to-one bearing splay essentially. So we can stay out of there and not create any geotechnical problems for that. So we'll be adding fill to, both sides to bring a path up on the dry side, and then we'll be adding play areas on the wet side basically to add like slide elements and that sort of a thing. So trying to do it somewhat symmetrical so we don't create any, kind of asymmetrical deal that would cause a slip failure.
Yeah, because I think, but I'd say the south side of Demers, you have the clay levee. On the north side, you of course have a wall. And the issue there, reason for the wall is because of soil stability. So, I mean, you're right on that edge to be able to add both weight on both sides to be able to be stable.
Yep, and that's where that symmetrical feeling would probably be our best bet to kind of get that done. So our exercise so far has been to make sure that, when we do our flooding analysis, we're not causing any inundations. The next thing will be does it actually work, right? So we got to make sure that that goes through and we don't cause any further issues in that sense. But we did pull back the old core drawings too and their borings for the file too. So we're comparing our new stuff versus the old stuff as we go.
Okay. One of the areas, this being on the south side of Sortie Bridge, is ice. And you can get ice dams built up at the bridge that would back up. And you're building a bunch of this in an area that could have ice impacts. How did that fit into your design?
Yeah, and we kind of looked at that stream velocity a little bit for that. Granted, we can still get ice kind of coming backwards, filling up the bridge and working back, assuming it wouldn't be, clipping at a really great pace. If anything, it would slow down at the bridge and kind of work its way back. We did talk about designing some, we'll call them icebreakers that could kind of get built into, the play aspects of it too, turn, one into a zip line, one into a swing and stuff. Right now, our hydrology folks don't think that's exactly necessary for the ice components of it, just because it is flowing so much slower on that side, and just for the amount of frequency with which we've had flooding in that area.
That one I may want to follow up with you a little bit because I don't quite understand. I know the speed. Granted, I would agree with you. Your higher volume is going to be in the deeper areas. On the side, you don't. But when you have that big sheet of ice coming, even if it's at a slow speed, it's pretty.
It can be destructive.
It can be damaging.
Yep, for sure.
And then
we can get you our MT2 stuff for the FEMA submittal.
Because I was looking at that. I love the idea of that turtle play structure, but this is in a floodplain, in a floodway. Those massive structures that look like for fun, I'm worried about the long-term operation and maintenance of those.
And this structure in particular is proposed to be made out of like aluminum perforated panels, essentially. So water will mostly flow through them. You'll catch a little debris here and there, but the idea would be that, a slow, stagnant water like we'd get with some of those flooding events would go through it instead of rather getting built up and really mucking it up. That sort of thing. So that's one component we're looking at.
Then one of the other questions is the levee itself was designed for a 3-foot raise if need be. Has that been incorporated into it?
So what we looked at doing there with a lot of the other crossing paths in town and throughout the kind of whole greenway system is going above that clay cap level and then adding another foot to the ultimate height. So these are like 840.5 in this spot. So our top of path would be 841.5. Again, that's we're trying to kind of minimize that impact to the top of the levee because if we add 3 feet there, we're almost above the flood wall itself too, right? So it gets to be pretty close. So we'll be able to kind of bridge over top of that path if need be and sit on that platform. So kind of in this area here, we'd be able to kind of build through there and add to it if we need to in a temporary basis, as you're saying there, whether we have to revise this landing in particular a little bit, but handrails could be removed for the time being if need be and built up and that sort of a thing if we need to do something like that. But this is really the only crossing we're showing on the levee just because of that sense we want to be able to add up 3 feet. We don't want to have a bunch of infrastructure that we're going to ruin every time to do that.
Yeah, could you go back? I would like to look a little bit at some of the structures that are in the, could you go back another one, maybe, yeah, like that. Those structures, again, I love the way it looks. It's just great. I'm just terribly concerned in the floodplain, long-term maintenance of that in a flood event. Now, I guess that's with the investment we're going to make and the long-term operation, I guess that concerns me.
Sure. And we have talked to some of these aspects, whether we can make them somewhat removable. So, there's obviously procedures in place that come through the emergency preparedness plan with the flooding and everything in town. So if we need to design more of these things to be removable, if we need to take out, like at the pavilion, take out tables and chairs, that's easy, right? If these need to be removable, I think that's something we could probably come up with as well. And Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but these could be, they're a natural timber, but we can also get more of like a poly timber to kind of emulate that would last longer and, kind of be easier to power wash and that sort of a thing if need be. So that'd be a materiality thing, but something like this, the stone and the rock and the pathways and stuff, that stuff would all be fine. It's more so, probably the nesting materials here.
Yeah. Could you go back to the amount of times that these areas have flooded?
Sure. Okay, so this is a graph based on the flow, and this one's more based on elevation.
And yeah, go back to that one just before this is. So what flood elevation do you think you're designed to with this here?
For before we get touched on anything, any
Yeah.
part of the site. So the elevation at that is probably, if we're looking at the playground, it's about 26, 27-ish, 827, somewhere in there.
827 as
Yep.
far as the elevation. Do you know what flood gauge that is?
I don't have that in front of me here, but let's see if we have the baseline 0. I would have to look at that, yeah, to get you that. But these are all based on that gauge that's right on the Sorley.
Okay.
So yeah, for comparison, I guess maybe the 87, 2011.
It's all got to be around 49, 50 feet, I would think, Ken, don't you think?
For those.
Yeah, it's got to be around 49, 50.
Yep.
51, between 49 and 51.
Okay.
Good questions. Thank you, Mr. Bean. Mr. Frito.
Just a real quick comment. When I joined the board and we started talking about this, I think, we had some ideas. I was down in like Winnipeg for the first time. I saw the forks, and this is beyond what I would expected. Like, this is really, really cool. And, we pride ourselves on the slogan, live, work, and play. And I think this absolutely considers the play element of this. And then I think about, there's not a lot for families to do downtown. This is a great economic driver for just downtown area, and new businesses can start with, they're more family oriented, and just I think there's some great opportunities here. So the stuff you guys have incorporated into this is great. So just that's all I have to say. I mean, obviously we do have to worry about the stuff Mr. Bean is talking about, but I would love to see my grandkids at this at some point in the future. So I think this is great.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Ms. Burke.
Yes, I also agree. I think this is going to be a great amenity and help with families downtown. It'll help others engage that are out on the walk with their family on the Greenway and just give them something additional to do. I think it's going to be a really great investment for us. I just had one question. You mentioned that the turtle is going to be aluminum perforated panels. Is that going to get hot?
It may get hot. There's a lot of play pieces inside the turtle too, so it's kind of designed in a way that you're not climbing on the outside of it too much with that, but on the inside there's a lot of netting and different material type slides that aren't going to get super hot, so the exterior will be kind of a mix of those aluminum panels and then like a plastic kind of viewing glass for some of these. Like, you'll be able to look through a lot of these in the shell, and also the eyes you can climb and kind of see kids climbing up through there and looking around too. So yeah, it will get hot just like anything else, but it won't be like.
And I'll chime in real quick.
Bruce, go ahead. Yep.
What's great about it is the majority of the entry and access points are kind of underneath, whether on the belly or through the mouth, as you saw the children kind of climbing in. So it kind of provides its own shade. So while the top of it, that aluminum will get warmer, that's not actually a climbable surface. So within it has composite plastic wood materials, as well as nets and different elevations that you climb throughout. So they really do safeguard against those potential burns.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. I think the citizens of Grand Forks, I've heard for years asking about what can we do on the wet side of the dike. Well, personally, my concern is the proximity to Town Square and some of the negative element we've had down there in the last few years. But I know that we've been working with our PD and we'll make sure that it's well taken care of, and a great place for families to go. So with all of that said, are we going to approve the engineering agreement and move forward with final design?
I'll move approval.
It's moved by Berg, second by Friedolf. Thank you. Any further comments or additional questions? Hearing none.
I would.
Yes, Mr. Bean? Yes,
I
sir.
would concur with one thing. I'm glad you talked about the security issues that we may have, because I think it's going to be attractive for those types of things, although I think we can do it. I think between now and the next meeting, I would like to, when we have final approval, look at a little bit of those elevations on the flood. Sure.
Great, excellent. So we're lucky to have you with us, Mr. Bean. Okay, any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries. Osowski and Sents. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight too. Appreciate it. Okay. Item 4.8, lead service line replacement project. Ms. Barbie.
Thank you. This project actually is a combination of what we've done in the past. We're working with the engineering department on our water main replacement project. So this past year, if you recall, we didn't award that project. It was on Cottonwood Street. It was because the project the bids came in a little bit higher than we anticipated. So we're actually going to pull the design back out for that area and incorporate from 4th Avenue to about 9th Avenue on Cottonwood Street where we do water main replacement. Our plan is to do lead service line replacement with that, along with individual lead service line. It's incorporated on the map at the back of your packet. But the intent there is the federal government has mandated that we replace all the lead service lines in Grand Forks by 2037. And so when we started the program, it was recommended, now it's required. And so that's the change. We're working with Houston Engineering. They've done a project with the city of Fargo and been quite successful and learned a few lessons there. So that's why we had asked them to assist us with this project as well. This is for another engineering services agreement. We would fund it through the project that wasn't bid out this year. And then we also have an agreement with the homeowner that we're asking for you to approve as well, that we can work with a homeowner to replace the service line, because as you may or may not know, but the service line is owned by the homeowner in the city of Grand Forks. So we actually need them to sign off and let us assist them with replacing any of those lead service lines.
Any questions? Approved by Osowski, second by Byrd. Any further comment or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 4.9, consideration of draft final socioeconomic study. Mr. Phelan.
Mr. President, I'm going to get it ready for Ms. Kuba here.
Great. Ms. Kuba, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. I'm just going to introduce everything, but our socioeconomic study has been a process of gathering data and information from multiple sources. And when we were here last, we asked you about growth rates and for population and what would work best for the city of Grand Forks as part of the overall metropolitan transportation or metropolitan planning area. And that rate was used as in this last stage here that we have of the study that SRF and Praxis will be presenting to you guys. So Dave Sweeney is here to present.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council President Sandy and members of the committee. I'm Dave Sweeney with SRF Consulting. We also have Mark Schill from Praxis here on hand tonight to help answer any questions. Praxis really provided support for public engagement portion of this process, and then also for helping us understand the local and regional economic development context. As Terry mentioned, we were here in February to get your blessing on a growth scenario to use for the city of Grand Forks. And then we subsequently took that growth scenario for population, households, and employment. And in the second phase of the study that we've been working on the last few months here, we went about allocating that growth to different areas of the city. Really, what this is, the primary output of the study is data. It's data that's going to feed into the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update, and specifically into the travel demand model that ATAC is working on right now. So as we think about future jobs and households, the future growth, that growth is obviously going to occur in different areas of the community, and we're making our best guesses about where that will occur, and then that will become future trips on the roadway network. And through the modeling process, we will develop an understanding of potential capacity or congestion issues related to that growth. But really, we're at the beginning stages of this right now. This is all part of the MPO's regular 5-year planning cycle. So we're at the end stage of this study. As I mentioned, we just completed the TAZ allocation piece, and I will highlight some general findings from that here in just a minute. Just to kind of level set and refresh your memory, as I mentioned, we were here in February. Down at the bottom, you can see the overall population, household, and job projections for 2055. So we're thinking out 30 years. You can see the overall change in those targets that we're planning for highlighted. So for the MPA total, about 6,600 households. For jobs, about 4,950. And the big chunk of that is obviously going to be in Grand Forks. Grand Forks City's highlighted at the top there. But when we think about the entire MPA and the traffic analysis zones that we'll be showing on maps here in a minute, all of that MPA total growth is going in to that planning area. One thing that we didn't talk about last time we were here were employment forecasts. So I just wanted to give a little bit more background on that. The employment forecasts are tied directly to our overall population growth projections and specifically to our analysis of how that is going to break down by age group. So understanding that different age groups will be employed kind of at different rates and in different industries. So we really thought about the differential effects of age groups on employment by industry. That's reflected in our projections. And so we're making projections for each age group. And then the totals, total employment projections are the sum of those models for each age group. A little bit more on the TAZ allocation process. This was really an iterative process. First of all, there were a few adjustments that were made to TAZ boundaries kind of before we had to start. So ATAC took care of that for us. Then we had to establish the 25 baseline allocation. So it was a process of looking at what was allocated in 2020 for the previous plan, thinking about the development that has occurred in the last 5 years, making sure that that's reflected in the 2025 baseline. Then we took a first stab at preliminary TAZ allocation. So again, we're taking the total growth targets for employment and households, and we're dispersing that in these different planning areas throughout the region. And then we did get stakeholder feedback on that. A lot of feedback from City of Grand Forks and from East Grand Forks as well, and had to make some spot adjustments. And at the end of the process, we ended up having to kind of rebalance everything again, just to make sure that the total projections were consistent with our forecasts. I will say, I think it was a great opportunity to work with city planners here. They had a lot of key input and insight. Something that's kind of nice about this region is it's not that big, and we kind of know where growth is going to occur. So we were actually able to go TAZ by TAZ. The city have great knowledge of planned and proposed development initiatives. You brought up a number of these earlier today. So all of that growth that you're talking about, that you're anticipating, is reflected in our allocations. We also thought about overall site development potential. What's the remaining acreage? What's infrastructure capacity, et cetera. I'm thinking about the timing of major infrastructure projects. You illuminated some of those as well. So as we're thinking about the phasing of growth, some of those other major investments are definitely going to play an impact there. City staff also have a great knowledge of local landowners, what folks are considering, what they've talked about for a while, what may be coming down the pipe. So all of that kind of played a role in our allocation process. As far as households, we had to provide layers of data here. So the model needs the number of 1-person, 2-person, 3-person households. I think it's up to 7-person households. So we're forecasting a lot of detailed data that is not reflected in the household totals and in the maps I'll show in a minute. Employment totals are also a composite of various industries: ag, manufacturing, retail, et cetera. Again, the model needs all of those. Different industries and different household types are going to generate different levels of traffic, different numbers of trips. So that detail is in the data that we provided. We also used a proprietary data source called Data Axle to help us understand, what big data kind of thinks as to where growth will occur. And our allocations did take that into account. We did talk about a couple of growth areas that are outside of the TAZ network, outside of the metropolitan planning area. Those will be incorporated into the travel demand model. So we know there are some potential growth areas that don't fall within our TAZ network, but they'll still be accounted for in the travel demand model. They'll just be modeled as external stations. So a couple of the maps here, overall household change 2025 to 2055. You can see as far as Grand Forks, probably no surprise here, but the primary growth areas for housing are going to be the south end, and then there are some infill sites in the I-29 corridor, particularly on the east side there, and some scattered infill sites throughout the community. But just looking at the map, the darkest area, 501 plus households, you can see down in the south end, and then the next darkest 251 to 500, sorry. So focusing on those dark areas, that's where we're anticipating the most growth. That's where we've allocated the most housing growth. As far as employment, again, thinking out 30 years, primary growth areas, the north end of town, existing industrial sites and areas that are already primed for expansion, as we know, and then the I-20 corridor as well, and specifically the west side there, sorry, I-29 corridor. And then similarly to households, you can see darker shading indicates higher levels of jobs. So the darkest there is 251 plus up to 525 jobs. And then the next darkest there is 101 to 250. So you can see those areas where we are expecting a higher concentration of employment growth. I will say that the final draft of the report and all the appendices, which provide a lot more detail, are available on the MPO's website, which you can peruse. But other than that, we are very close to wrapping up this project. So I believe we're just looking for a recommendation to approve today, and we'll be coming back next week for the city council meetings, and then bringing it to the MPO executive board next month for final approval. As I said, ATAC is already working with this data to update their traffic demand model, and that will feed directly into the MTP, which is one tool, just one that the cities can use as they're thinking about future roadway improvements that are going to be needed. So with that, I will open it up for discussion or any questions, or Mark, if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, Mr. Veen.
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Ms. Sandy. I was looking at what you have shown as your job growth, and it brought me back to what Mr. Phelan had talked about earlier when he went through all those projects, the number of jobs that we were looking at. And I don't remember what that amount was, Todd, but
About 1,600, Mr.
about
Bean.
1,600, and that's in a relatively short period of time. And this shows a total of 4,800 over 30 years. I don't know if there's an exact right answer here for what that would be, but we could exceed what we're projecting here if we go through with Mr. Phelan, what you had projected we have the potential for.
It is. It's hard to believe, but it's a positive sign. We just need to plan for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I said, are we on the low end of our growth or whatever? But we'll have time in the next 30 years to correct that if we need to.
Yes, Mr. Freehouse.
So where does the industries you pulled from, where does that data come from?
So we were relying on county data. The industry projections are done at the county level and then kind of made to fit the MPA planning area. But we're using the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the NAICS Common Industrial Codes. We kind of had to shoehorn that into the existing model using those 6 industry classifications that I had on the screen: ag, manufacturing, et cetera.
'Cause it doesn't right there, you don't capture one of the main industries now with UAS. And that's probably, next to agriculture and manufacturing, probably one of the largest growing right now. And I think that's going to skyrocket throughout the next few years. And so you're just at that, upward tick right now. And I think that make sure you look into that.
Yeah, I mean, these are really general industry classifications, so we didn't get that specific, but we did talk about that, the potential growth there. And Ken, I think to your point as well, I think that we've reflected all of the growth that's anticipated in the next 5-6 years in particular. We definitely see more growth on the short-term side of things, but we do think that that's accounted for in our forecasts and in the TAC allocations.
Great. Further comments or thoughts? Yes, Ms. Osowski.
And this is based on that 0.8%. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'll math it up and then I'll let you know. Thank you.
And that's for the population projections. The household growth and job growth are not growing necessarily at the same rate.
Yeah, I guess when I just grokked it though, it said the yields a projected city population of approximately 72 to 73 by 2055. And so, I mean, I'll do the math and we can touch base next week because I didn't have time to do it. But when I grokked it, that's what it stated. And so I'm just wondering, and it states on here because it did pull up that we came up with a 0.8%. And so compounded annually, it stated that about 23,000 by 2055. But like I said, I'll go home and I'll check my math, but I'm just making sure that that's what's in this report.
Yeah, did you say 72 to 73,000? We're showing 72.8 for
By
total population for 2055.
By 2055?
Yep.
Population. Okay. Okay. Perfect. For that. So that's for the whole metropolitan area then.
This is just
Okay,
for
perfect.
Grand Forks here.
Okay. Awesome. And then last time we were able to see all the stuff from East Grand Forks. Well, I didn't see anything really about East Grand Forks in this presentation. Or like, what's their population based on? I believe Dana asked that question in an email. Did you not?
Yeah, so we're projecting, East Grand Forks is right here below Grand Forks City. I didn't want to get into them too much. They'll have their own meeting tomorrow, but we are projecting about plus 1,700 for them. They do have a lower growth rate.
What is that growth rate? I guess that you're.
It's 0.6.
That's what you're going to calculate it at. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great.
Move approval.
Moved by Ms. Berg. Is there a second by Friedholz? Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate that. Item 410, University of North Dakota Ray Richards Golf Course Development Project. Mr. Phelan.
Council President Sandy, members of the committee of the whole. This evening, President Armacost is going to lead the UND team regarding this UND Ray Richards golf course redevelopment. Colby from Baker Tilly is going to present the findings, the third-party financial but-for analysis. Maureen Storstad is going to go over some of the financial impacts. Mr. Gossad is going to go over some of the legal stuff, and maybe there'll be some wrap-up things, and then we'll hand it back to you. And as you guys know, we'll be back here tomorrow with all the two other taxing entities. So with that, I'm honored to invite President Armacost to start the briefing.
May I ask a quick question? I thought the reason for the combined meeting was so that we all got the same information. And so I guess I don't understand why we're having a full-blown
Sure.
presentation tonight.
The reason why we're having it tonight is the city council has to authorize that we move forward in the process. So we're briefing, what we're asking tonight for you to recommend to yourself for next week, Monday, is that number one, you accept the preliminary recommendation of a 20-year, 90% pilot incentive, and also to set the public hearing date for September 8th, 2026. And so usually what happens in this process, but we wanted to make sure we accommodated President Armacost's schedule, is that you would have approved this project to move forward on Monday, to move forward preliminarily, set the public hearing date, and next week we would have had the combined meeting. But I think this actually works better. Before you make a preliminary decision to move forward next week, Monday, you're going to receive all the feedback in advance. But like all projects, you've got to kick this thing off next week, Monday. And if you don't preliminary approve it next week, Monday, nothing's going to happen. So that's why we're here today, to get the full briefing. The other entities will hear it tomorrow. And then once we have the combined meeting with the other entities, there'll be briefings for them in their August meetings leading up to the September 8th public hearing. That's the reason why we're here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. President Armacost, thank you for being here tonight.
President Sandy, members of the council, it's good to see you. Thanks for seeing us today. And I'm eager to share with you the overall picture of this development for the Ray Richards Golf Course. We've been here once before to talk about zoning, and today it's to talk about the pilot, but most importantly, to give you an overall perspective and answer your questions about the project. I'm certainly proud, I mentioned this last time, proud of the team and the work that we've done both at UND and our development partners, but also the partnership that we had within the citizens of Grand Forks. And in addition, the Garden View Townhome Association and the discussions we had with them. They, as you know, are the most impacted because of their proximity to the golf course, but we are pleased to work with them. And I think the solution we created and presented last time was just a great outcome of that sense of partnership. Online, you'll see Steve Burian. He's representing our development partners on this, and he'll follow me after I get through a few introductory comments regarding the objectives of this particular project. This slide is just a reminder of what we talked about when we were here for the zoning discussions, that we had set down some objectives for this development or the redevelopment of the Ray Richards Golf Course. Number one is preserve the golf course as a golf course. It's been a mainstay part of our community for nearly 60 years, but there were financial impacts as well. As I briefed last time, the university was losing about $500,000 a year in operating losses on the golf course. And part of this redevelopment was to make sure that we could have a financially viable model to continue operating the course and serving the citizens. We wanted to also create a new home for the UND men's and women's golf programs, but also, more importantly, to add an amenity to our city that the citizens can enjoy and that golfers in the community could take advantage of. It also provides additional housing options on the north part of the community. The project history, just to go through a little bit of this, it was gifted by the Ray Richards family in 1962. The course opened up in 1968. We had a brief hiatus from 2016 to 2020, and at that was kind of pre-pandemic. Some of you recall a decision made by the university to shut down the course and pursue different options, but because of some discussions with the legislature and with local advocates, we reopened it in 2020, right as the pandemic was unfolding. The current project that we're talking about intersects with the work that's happening with the 42nd Street underpass and the Department of Transportation work that's happening there. You'll recall that about 6.5 acres of the northwest corner of the golf course have been sold to the Department of Transportation to do that work. As a consequence, that drove the redesign, the need for a redesign of the golf course, in particular 3 holes that would be affected. But as we thought about that, we also were thinking at the same time about how do you keep the golf course financially viable. And we issued a competitive RFP to make that happen that would involve both an outdoor driving range, we refer to that as Top Tracer because that's the technology that's used at a facility like this, but also the housing piece. So it really was 2 elements, but we treat that as a single project because the success of this redevelopment relies on both pieces of those happening together. I felt, as I said before, we worked as a very good community partner with the neighbors and with others to make that happen. And because of the community feedback, we made significant adjustments to the plan. You'll recall that the original proposal had 300 units of apartment in the apartment complexes, and now it's a single apartment complex with 169 units. So we made significant concessions, and at the time I mentioned I knew that this would have an impact on what the university's goal would be in terms of becoming net zero in terms of the financial operation, knowing that compromise to reduce the amount of units or the number of units would change the financial structure of this deal. And that, of course, impacts our ability to operate a viable model, which is why we're here today to talk about the tax incentive. We rezoned at the February 26th meeting, and then with all the uncertainty of the tax incentives, because there were some signals during those meetings that there might be some opposition as well as some support, we decided to hold on the reconstruction of the golf course pending the pilot decision. And I'll say a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Steve Burian, who's going to pick it up here. Steve, I'll control it from here, so I'll click. Just tell me when you want me to move forward.
All right. Thank you, President Armacost, President Sandy, and members of the Committee of the Whole, thanks for the opportunity to present tonight. I apologize for not being there in person, but my dad had another heart attack late last week, and he's in intensive care unit at Stanford, and so I felt it best to stay in Bismarck to support him, and Todd Phelan suggested that appearing virtually would be a second option. So I'll do my best to walk through this from a distance. The University of North Dakota, in response to the various things going on with the Ray Richards Golf Course and the development by the Department of Transportation and other things, issued a request for information and then a request for proposal. In fact, we did respond to UND 3 different times in terms of providing interest on this particular project. What they were seeking particularly some type of housing solution for the city of Grand Forks, and they were looking at some type of top tracer golf, as well as a new home for UND Golf. Based on our team's experience with Memorial Village 1 and Memorial Village 2, which we feel were quite successful as private-public partnerships with the University of North Dakota, we responded. Our team was relatively large. It included Burdian and Associates, TL Stroh, community contractors, Dakota Commercial, and Mac Construction, all local businesses within the city of Grand Forks. And then Mac Construction did have Mark Johnson with them, who's a longtime golf pro and the former manager of the Sweet Shots down in Fargo, as what part of their team as well. As we considered concepts for responding to housing, Top Tracer, and UND Golf, we considered what would be some of the required and neat things that could happen for the University of North Dakota, for the community, for Grand Forks Public Schools, and also for the Park Board. And how we will be responding to that is with our proposed project, where we will lease the ground from the University of North Dakota. We will construct and operate the improvements while maintaining that ground lease. And the 2 elements that we're looking at were considered by UND as a single project, and so we've approached it from that standpoint as well. Go ahead and go to the next slide, President Armacraft.
Yeah, and Steve, you also mentioned that experience with Memorial Village 1 and 2. I think one important thing to note is one element of that is Albrecht Field, which we designed, and it's for UND softball, but it's also probably even a larger community asset than it is in use for UND. So that type of use of UND space and facilities has really benefited the community, and I know that served as an important blueprint for what we're conceiving here as well.
So at this point, we did put together a video that we think really captures the essence of the project.
Okay, I'm gonna hit play, Steve.
Yep, sounds good.
The Ray Richards Golf Course Redevelopment Project provides the support needed to preserve a true community gem while continuing the legacy of the Ray Richards family. Now, together, we usher in the next chapter, honoring that legacy of the course while creating a bold vision with new opportunities and benefits for the Grand Forks community. With UND retaining ownership of the land, this transformation reimagines the property as a year-round destination, blending recreation, residential living, entertainment, and vibrant community spaces into one unified development. At its heart, the beautiful 9-hole golf course will be preserved and reimagined, remaining a place where golfers of all ages and skill levels can play, learn, and connect. Surrounding the course, the new Greenview Living Complex will help meet a critical housing need while offering scenic golf course living options for residents of all ages. As a new addition to the 42nd Street Entertainment Corridor, a new Top Tracer facility will elevate the golf experience, creating a year-round venue for recreation, and will provide entertainment options, all while attracting new visitors to Grand Forks. It becomes an important new home for UND Golf and creates new opportunities in our community for school groups, field trips, and coordination with local high school golf teams. The timing for redevelopment is right. Strategic infrastructure improvements, including the 42nd Street underpass, Make this the ideal moment to enhance the course, support its continued success, and drive economic development while generating new tax revenue from land that currently provides none. We look forward to the future of Ray Richards Golf Course. It's more than redevelopment. It's an investment in strengthening the partnership between the University of North Dakota and the Grand Forks community.
So with that, I just have a few more slides to highlight a few more of the specifics of each of the development. And so in the northeast corner, we have the what we're calling Greenview Living, which will be, if you turn to the next slide, President Armacost. It'll be a 5-story as envisioned with underground parking, market rate apartments for all. It will be at that northeast corner of the Ray Ridge Golf Course. It'll bound on Demers and 34th Street. In the discussions that we had with the neighborhood, we dialed that down to a apartment complex that would have a maximum of 169 units, and that's how it's recognized within the zoning of the PUD. We do plan to have this apartment complex be an above average complex. So we, as I mentioned, we will have indoor parking. We're envisioning pickleball courts, outside seating, a lounge gathering space, fitness area, and hopefully preserving the existing putting green that UND already has on the Ray Richards Golf Course as part of the development. If you've looked at the site map at all and you see that blue down in the southwest corner of that northeast corner, those are pickleball courts, not a pool. And so hopefully I don't have to answer any questions about the opulence of a pool that we're adding to this, because I think that's been a misunderstanding by several. It's just a blue pickleball court. Next slide. In the other corner, we originally had this combined with the apartment complex, but it was seen as too intrusive to those neighbors that President Armacost talked about. And so we did quite a bit of both architectural and engineering finessing to move it over to the southwest corner. And so if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about that further. This is going to be 2 aspects. The first one is the top tracer facility. That's the part of the facility off to the right when you look at it. At this point, it'll be located on 42nd Street, right on the entertainment corridor, as the video noted. We're envisioning a 2-level building with about 30 outdoor hitting bays, which will be the focus of the facility. We also envision a year-round support asset in terms of a restaurant and a bar, which can then extend to the golf course as well. And then as we go to the next piece here, this will serve as the new clubhouse for the golf course at Ray Richards. So you'll enter from this side of the course instead of from the northeast corner. Next slide. The other really important part of this, as we provided good homes across UND for nearly all of the sports, will be to take UND men's and women's golf to the next level. And so we're anticipating having a UND-owned facility on the left side of this building, which will be directed for those 2 sports programs. It will include lockers, meeting room, offices for coaches, a short game hitting area as shown as the picture on the right. And then they will have exclusive access. We're discussing right now to 2 of those hitting bays as we move forward with the project to take UND golf to the next level. As part of any project like this, then obviously for the developers, we have to build it and pay for it. And so we developed a relatively comprehensive capital and operating budgets and put those in the form of pro forma. We coordinated all that effort very closely with UND to make sure that we'd be responsive to the RFP that they put out and would meet the needs of the various programmatic elements that they required. When we submitted the application, we did provide that full financial package and transparency to Baker Tilly. So I think they had all of the different numbers that we had put together in order to make things work. And in coordinating with UND, we are here tonight, I guess, as Todd alluded to request for a 90% 20-year pilot or tax abatement for the entire project. We did work hard with UND to arrive at a lower amount. When we first were talking with Baker Tilly, We had a little bit bigger ask, but as we worked with some of the terms of our parts of the project and then UND's continued financial commitment toward the golf course, we settled upon an ask of 90% for 20 years, which is what we're here tonight to discuss. And we've really looked at the pro forma closely, as had Baker Tilly, and we don't feel that the project is affordable without this level of incentive.
Great, thanks.
Slide.
Thanks,
Back to
Steve.
you, I think, President
Yeah, I was going to take this next one. And as Steve mentioned earlier in his comments, the proposal with the pilot still generates tax revenue, both property tax and sales tax, on what's currently non-taxable property. So there is an immediate benefit to the city by generating that additional revenue. It preserves the course, which we think is a vital part. It was one of my key objectives and creates a great community entertainment option. We hadn't talked about it earlier, but the opportunity for our public schools to participate and to use this facility is real. We heard that from both golf programs and individual students about the opportunity that this type of facility represents. And the economic development benefit, we think, is substantial. And the housing options that are afforded to young professionals, to airmen out at the base, to the workforce members, to retirees, and also UND students. This is not designed as student housing, it's market rate apartments. And so we anticipate a wide swath of people choosing to live there. And again, the partnership or the connection between the city of Grand Forks and UND, similar to what we have done with Albrecht Field, is a real opportunity here that we think is something to celebrate as well. I have been asked a question a number of times when I'm engaging with folks, and I hesitate bringing this up because I don't want it to be taken the wrong way. It's not intended to be a threatening statement. But I'm asked often, what happens if this isn't approved? And the fact is, if we don't have a viable financial model to make this work, the project doesn't happen. And if the project doesn't happen, I have to ask the question, what's the best interests of the university? Can I continue losing $500,000 a year operating a golf course that is not part of the standard mission of the university? And so we'll pause the golf course and its redevelopment and have to reevaluate the long-term use. And that reevaluation could certainly mean that we lose the golf course as an asset to the community. I just want to be upfront that that's what, as you're creating your own decision tree and what the possible outcomes are, one possible outcome of not pursuing this is the fact that the golf course may no longer exist. I just don't know if we'll be able to afford it. I think next is Baker Tilly. Yeah.
Mr. Field? Yeah, certainly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good, but I did see a hand.
Yeah.
I can wait till the end. Thank you,
Okay,
President.
thank you. All right, Colby, I'll move the slides. We have your slide with the cover one to start.
Very good. I want to thank everyone for letting us be here. I'm Colby Kuzanowski with Baker Tilly, Senior Manager with our Municipal Advisory Practice. With me, but not on screen, is Steve Scharf and Braden Rugay with the firm as well. I want to go through the presentation that was discussed earlier. We can move to the next slide. First, I wanted to take a brief look at the overview of the project as it was described. We do build our presentations with presenting the project as it was presented a lot. So I'm going to move over quite a bit of this material since it was covered by Steve and the university and the university as well. So I'll start off with the highlights of our review, and we did evaluate this, though it is a public-private partnership with the university, Steve and his group, and all the other jurisdictions at play. We did evaluate it with all of the same contextual market data and benchmarks that you would expect with a private development, just to put it into the same context. And we'll dive into that component of the project a little bit later. What you have in front of you is a highlight of all of the salient features of the project in both request and return ranges. The way in which we approach these analyses for the but-for test or determining whether the project would happen in the current market without the incentive as requested is we try to benchmark it as broadly and as well in well-documented ways we can, using national data from both investor expectations and things like construction operations, revenues, and all of the elements you would expect in a project that factor into its ultimate return. The question is largely based on, would the project generate a return expected of investors and equity investors in comparable real estate projects without the incentive that was requested? I like to say I start at the end. Our determination was that the incentive as requested was an essential component to making sure the project realized a market return. So you can see here that the combined IRR for the two elements of the project, we evaluated them separately and as the combined rate of return for this project is 6.31%, which is very, very close to the bottom range of what we see as investor expectations for a project of this kind. You see that the two separate pro formas for the housing component and for the Top Tracer golf facility. The housing was 6.67%, slightly higher than the other facility. The Top Tracer is 5.84%. And this would be in line with our expectations, kind of what we would see in the market, given the difference between the two elements of the project. The incentive on a nominal value means not adjusted for the cash flows over 20 years requested is approximately $10.54 million. This is something that I believe city staff is going to dive into a little bit closer as we get farther along in the presentation, but we'll speak in terms of both the nominal value, which is the gross value of all activity generated from the project, and also the net present value, just to understand what the value of that cash flow from the incentive is today. We can move to the next slide. For the project overview, I'm going to spend a light amount of time here since this was already spoken to some extent. We reviewed the information provided by Mr. Burrian and his group to evaluate the elements of the project and how those factor into the cost of construction, operations, and all the other elements, including rents and really the salient features of the project that yield the ultimate return and factor into the costs. We reviewed it in the context of the timing and tried to benchmark the conclusions for what we expected to be the process going forward for the project development within the context of the golf course project. You can see some of the major features here. I'll draw the attention to the main component we evaluated, which is the 20-year, 90% pilot that was requested as a portion of this project. We can move on to the next slide. So, for the assistance and fiscal impact, again, we tried to take a light touch here because we know the city will speak to this at a greater extent later on in the project. We evaluated the project with a 90% abatement request for a period of 20 years, including the post-project land and non-pilot value model as being fully taxable following the closure of the incentive period, and the final tax lien participation is subject to obviously the confirmation of this process. We can see that the breakout between the two different incentive amounts on a nominal basis, the Greenview Living is 8.16 million and the Top Tracer is 2.38. If we were to take those at a 6% net present value, what's the current value of those cash flows? The total incentive is 5.6 million and same proportion as the nominal. For 30-year fiscal metric, the highlights here is that we're seeing a full taxes without incentive at 19.37 million, meaning there's a net gain over time to the city, taking this land from being taxed as university land, ultimately to the final development, even involving the incentive. And then once the incentive period has concluded, that property will go back on the tax rolls. We can go to the next slide. So, a few other features of the project. We evaluated the project in its component units because from our perspective, we like to see housing evaluated against housing metrics globally, the same with Top Tracer, the Top Tracer golf facility as sort of a unique feature. Housing, there's a lot of very good data available. We were able to look at Mr. Burrian and his team's proposal and evaluate what they had in the context of the market, understanding both the local geography and national investor expectations. There's a lot of very good data related to housing, multifamily development, and we found that the conclusions and our conclusion of our review of their information, all of their assumptions were largely in line with what we expect in the market. The thing to note about the Top Tracer facility and its capital stack and component elements of the project is that it is a unique facility. There's a limited amount of information about facilities like this. So we took a lot of different approaches to evaluating this. And one thing we like to do, knowing that there isn't an abundance of facilities like this, and they are unique and highly specialized, we do a sensitivity analysis to understand what the band of confidence around the assumptions we're given are. And we're looking for 20% reduction in expenses or increase in revenues on either side is sort of a general heuristic, knowing that it's unlikely for any project to vary that widely, whether it be construction cost, revenues, or really any other feature. And we found that even with considerable variations in some of the items that we can see changing, the facility still proved to need assistance in order to be successful in the manner that we would expect for this project. We can get further into some of the construction costs and the ratios, and we found that the assumptions present in the project were in line. And while there is a limited amount of information on facilities like the proposed Top Tracer, we found that the assumptions were reasonable and conservative, even considering a wide band of confidence in our evaluation. We can go to the next slide. We get to what I like to call my favorite slide in the presentation. This is where we get to explain our process and explain exactly what it is, what it isn't, and what kind of value it is actually offering, understanding the implications of this project. The purpose is to satisfy the necessary evidence for a governing body to make a but-for determination, which is whether the requested public participation supports the project feasibility based on forecasted return relative to market expectations. Would the project succeed in the market, but for the incentive? Our scope is to review the applicant pro formas and materials, including their underlying assumptions, evaluate the costs, revenues, expenses, financing, and exit assumptions, estimate the return without the required incentive, and compare returns to market ranges or proxy references. One note I'll make here, and I'll expand on more, is we do standardize the pro forma appropriately to what investors would be looking at and how they would standardize pro forma in a way. So you may hear us speak about things like hypothetical sale, the sale of the property. We're not expecting any specific sale or sale date. We do that in order to standardize the project, put it in terms that investors understand, and allow us to compare it nationally to other projects of its kind as that data is available. One thing we will note about our analysis is it's not a market feasibility opinion. We are not doing an economic feasibility analysis. It is a financial review of the project pro forma to understand the necessity for incentive and the gap that it's servicing. We're not guaranteeing project rents, expenses, financing terms, or exit values achieved. That is part of the strength of the analysis as we compare the information provided to us to what's out in the market, so that we can get a good understanding of what the market would support in projects like this and where these gaps derive from. And it's not an independent appraisal or construction estimate. Luckily, there's a very robust structure here in Grand Forks to provide some of that preliminary appraising. We generally avoid making any definitive claim to the appraisal value of property, and we do seek other resources to make sure we've developed a clear understanding of that. One final thing that's important for us to note as part of our analysis and our review is Baker Tilly is the financial advisor to the city of Grand Forks. We do not have a financial interest or stake in the project. We are an independent evaluator of this project on behalf of the city and its constituent stakeholders. We can go to the next slide. A little bit more about our analysis approach. We evaluate project costs, development costs. We compare these to data available in the market. We also evaluate the operating assumptions, ongoing expenses, revenues, what would be present in the market, and how closely the development team has benchmarked their project to what we think, based on the evidence available to us, is viable in the current market. We calculate the return. The development team offered a very robust pro forma. They provided us a lot of information. We did use it, adjust it, make sure that it was in line with a comparison that was broadly comparable to the data available. And we found that on an unlevered IRR basis, which is an internal rate of return metric that sort of decontextualized the project from the current interest rate and lending environment, and allows it to be compared to projects across geographies and across time. We found that the IRR supported a conclusion that there was a gap necessary, and we do like to benchmark it and standardize it in a way that really offers the widest ability for us to review that project and the gap. We also compared the market expectations. This is when I speak about investors and their expectations. We're talking about our primary source, the PricewaterhouseCoopers Investor Survey. We also look to other metrics and other sources to evaluate more niche projects or projects in more specific geographies as well. But that is the investor standard that we are comparing to. A key distinction that we want to make sure that we're looking at is we did broaden our analysis for the top tracer because it was necessary. We still found that the project as evaluated was within reason. The assumptions underpinning it were reasonable. We can go to the next slide. We'll talk briefly about the operating assumptions. For the housing metric, we found that from the revenues to the operating expenses for the unit mix, size, and construction type, we found that all of the metrics were in line and made sense for the project in the market. We're looking at things like what is the vacancy, what is the return. These are where we would go to national real estate sources to better understand this project. For the top tracer metric, we are looking at a variety of different factors and sort of benchmarking these to sensitize for economic shocks and adjustments to the assumptions. We found that the operating assumptions in both cases were very much in line with what we expect in the current market. We can go to the next slide. The return and debt service. We decontextualize projects in a large way from the lending environment because we do try to look at projects on an unlevered basis, on the basis of an equity investment, but it's real and present that the current real estate market is interest rates are a contributing factor as well as cap rates to the success of a lot of different projects. So we do like to understand what the coverage for the debt component of the project is. And while this isn't, in our opinion, the deciding factor for the success of a project, there is a very notable increase in the ability to cover debt and handle volatility in the market to pay obligations such as debt service for this project. From the incentive, it goes from a very, very lean, near 1% coverage in ideal scenarios to 1.3 in the case of housing and 1.46 in the case of the top tracer facility, which gives the project a lot more comfortability. And the way to contextualize this is if we're looking at ideal circumstances, the project makes that 6% combined revenue, 6+% combined revenue metric on an unlevered return basis. But we also want to consider what happens through economic cycles, economic periods. Over the course of 20 years, we could experience up to 2 8 to 10 year economic recession and growth cycles. So we want to keep in mind what is required to maintain this project long term as well. We can go to the next slide. So putting this in context, we're looking for the project and we're looking at the project in the context not just of the private market, but in cooperation with the university. I believe the university has articulated what the need is related to the project. They are looking to develop a project that helps support the operations of the golf course. And that offset creates a significant difference in the operating income of the project. I will note that we did consider the subsidy as part of the pro forma because it's a real, apparent, and salient feature of the project in its entirety between the golf course, top tracer, housing, and this project through the ground lease, which I believe city staff will speak to the specifics of later on, does a significant work in allowing the university support for the golf course to continue at a level of vacancy. We have some information about the rents paid over time to the project, and that those rentals, those ground lease rents are what supports the offset to the operating assumptions for the golf course. We can go to the next slide. So our conclusions and consideration is that the housing internal rate of return with the incentive as presented goes from 2.5% without the public participation to 6.67%, which is well below market range to the lower component of the market band that we identified. And placing the component near the lower end of the published market range means that that incentive gets it just above where we would see investors considering this project viable based on our assumptions. The top tracer improves from 4.3 to 5.84, but even just below the market range that we would expect for this project. Considerations to make: the housing and top tracer should continue to be reviewed on a component level when we're looking at exercises like this, but we do want to contextualize them as a single project that requires both elements to proceed. Combined project return is useful context, but doesn't override the component level economics. That's where we discuss the economic shocks, the debt service coverage ratio, understanding the type of circumstances necessary for this project to be successful in the long run. And the requested structure estimates collections beyond the initial incentive period to get an idea of what the ultimate taxable value of the property is. And obviously final pilot participation subject to elected bodies as we're seeing today. So our conclusion really is it passes the but-for test. This project will not proceed in the current market, even with its unique circumstances as a public-private partnership between private development and university and taxing jurisdictions locally. It would not proceed without the incentive as it was requested. We can go to the next slide. We can talk a little bit about our data sources here. We do use a wide variety of nationally recognized data sources to review our analysis. We rely significantly on the expertise of our team here at Baker Tilly as well. But wherever possible, we try to benchmark data to readily available sources that can be called back to. And with that, that concludes my presentation. And Baker Tilly is available for any questions necessary.
Good.
Thank you so
Sandy,
much.
If we go to Marine next.
Certainly. Ms. Dorstad.
Here we go, I think. Right. Okay.
All right, thank you. My analysis really focuses in on property tax collections. This is within your agenda, item D, labeled pilot impact analysis, but in front of you here. So just starting with really narrowing in on what is the impact of the property taxes collected as it relates to what is currently collected and what is it for not just the city, but all local taxing entities. So this first attachment here just shows an overall summary. As you can see, this is currently, and it's been highlighted prior, it's currently non-taxable property. So at the beginning, we're currently not receiving any property tax on this property. What you can see then based on the incentive that's in front of you with the 90% 20-year, what that would mean both at different time periods in summary form, cumulative, and also by the taxing entities. So as you can see, over a 5-year period, we look to, and I would just disclose that this is based on estimated values. It's based on the current mill levy. This, of course, would be valued on an annual basis and based on approved levies of that year as we go forward. But with the estimates in front of you and assumptions in a 5-year period, that would look to generate roughly $674,000 on a 10-year period, 1.1 to 1.2, a 20-year period about 2.2, and finally a 30-year period 8.8. And as you can see, that's broken down by entity. This just shows you just the overall, as you go through this period of time, how that additional revenue accumulates over time. It's basically just showing what I just summarized for you on the first attachment, just in a graphic form. But this now breaks out based on the assumptions. So we have a value, post-project value as part of the assumption. That would be $33.2 million, $2.2 million of that being land. With the current effective tax rate and the current breakout of the mills, these are the numbers that go into there. And then just showing in a little different take on a graphic form what that means annually. You'll see a spike there in the beginning as it's fully taxable during construction. So based on our timeline of assumptions, you'll see that spike, and then that 10% taxable throughout the 20-year period. And then when that rolls off, you can see that spike again. And then finally, for those that like spreadsheet form, this is just what I stated on all those other attachments, just in a graphic or a spreadsheet form for numbers people. But I'm here if you have any questions as we follow.
Any questions for Ms. Dorstad? Thank you.
Mr. Gosted.
Mr. Costa, yes, sir.
Yeah, I will go through real briefly because I've done this a number of times already, the legislative history behind tax incentives. I've reviewed from 1969 forward all the legislative changes and legislative history that has occurred when it was first adopted in 1969, when it was just a property tax exemption. That changed in 1994 during a special session where 40-57.1-03 subsection 2 was adopted for payment in lieu of property taxes. Shortly after that adoption, there was an Attorney General's opinion that was dated in 1996 asking the question about whether payment in lieu of property taxes was viable after commencement of construction. The Attorney General at the time, Heidi Heitkamp, went through the analysis of the statute that existed at the time and went through the legislative history that I've gone through when the payment in lieu of property tax was first adopted in 1994, and cited to Legislative Council prepared written summary of the House Bill number 1520 at the time. And I'm just going to read this to you. Under the heading of property taxes, the following language is found. House Bill 1520 creates a payment in lieu of taxes option that could be used in combination with or in placement of property tax exemptions for a project that begins construction after June 30th, 1994. Payments in lieu of taxes could apply to any kind of facility and do not apply only to agricultural processing facilities. It is apparent, and that was reading directly from the Legislative Council memorandum that was provided for the passage of that bill in 1994. Based upon that, the Attorney General concluded that it was apparent that the Legislative Assembly considered the in lieu of tax payments as an alternative option for a municipality that is separate from a tax exemption. The next Attorney General's opinion that I've reviewed is dated from 1998. In this, the question was whether a speculative building that is owned by a private developer would fit a payment in lieu or for a tax incentive. And remember, the payment in lieu is for a project, and a project is defined as any revenue-producing enterprise. And the Attorney General at that time, again, was Heidi Heitkamp, and concluded that whether it was revenue producing or not was a fact question that the municipality would have to decide. Finally, in 2003, again, this was a question that was posed, and this was Attorney General Wayne Stingham reached the same conclusion that Attorney General Heidi Heitkamp had reached back in 1996. Again, making reference that there is a clear difference between an exemption and in lieu of tax. And that it was apparent that the in lieu of tax payments is an alternative option for a municipality that is separate from a tax exemption. And there, again, concluding that unlike a property tax exemption, after having gone through the legislative history that I've reviewed, concluded that a payment in lieu can be started before construction started. And that was maybe a little bit different issue, but it highlights the fact that they are different. And a payment in lieu of property tax based upon the legislative history and the statute is for any revenue producing enterprise. You still have to consider, and this is a case that I think has been cited by others, it's Southern Valley Grain Dealers Association versus Board of County Commissioners. It's a lengthy opinion, but what the North Dakota Supreme Court concluded, and this is a 1977 case, but again, relating to tax incentives, said that there is nothing in the statute that requires that the project operator be a new business entity or that the project be a variety new to the state of North Dakota. The only thing that has to be considered is that the impact of new industry upon the old, that there's no unfair advantage shall be given. And then again, that's been cited a number of times. That's why we have these public hearings, to allow for competitors to speak and to allow you as the fact finders to determine whether there's unfair competition or not with respect to these types of projects. So again, I will go through the history tomorrow during that combined session. Hopefully I'll try to keep it as concise as possible, but starting in 1969 going forward, there's a lot of legislative history, but all of which support the conclusion that if it's a revenue producing enterprise, it is eligible for a pilot, subject, of course, to council approval.
And Mr. Gosted, could you speak to the development agreement? And there's been specific comment about clawbacks and what we would propose in this case, similar to what you discussed with the mod by Enclave.
It would be the same situation, is that the clawback would be for the length of time that the pilot would be in place. So if the pilot stayed in place for the full 20 years, and there are terms where a pilot can end early. So if it only goes 15 years, the clawback would be equivalent to 15 years, and it would be equivalent to the amount of the property tax incentive that had been enjoyed during that period of time. If it goes for the full 20 years, the clawback would be for that full 20-year period. That clawback would only kick in if the property became exempt, short of some approval by the city council to allow another incentive after that initial 20-year period of time.
Thank you, Council President and Community Hall, for your patience. Are we concluded?
Oh, those are great presentations. Thank you. Thank you all. Dr. Armacost, President Armacost, did you have something else for the good of the order, sir?
President Sandy, nothing else, just to entertain your questions. Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Osowski, I know you had a question.
Yeah, I have questions and comments. First off, I love the project. I have nothing against it. I thought that you, Mr. Armacost, and the university did a great job working with the neighbors, and you guys found a project that would fit on here and make everybody happy. So I have nothing bad to say about the project. I think people who like golf, I'm not a golfer myself, I think they would love this. And I'm sure that you will have an easy time renting out those apartments to people who like to golf. With that being said, I always said that I would, support the rezone of the project, but I will not support the pilot. But to me, and, like what Mr. Gossett said, is a tax incentive is different than a pilot, because that's a payment in lieu of taxes. That's a payment that you make instead of paying taxes, because you're not allowed to. One of the best examples that I think I found online about a payment in lieu of taxes is like a state park. Who they're in the county, they are not required to pay taxes on that land because it's a state park, but yet they rely on the county for their services to maintain the roads. And so instead of, paying taxes, they make a payment in lieu of taxes. And so I'm really confused. Have we been handing out pilots this whole time, or have we been handing out tax incentives? Because they're two separate agreements. And to me, I don't believe you can have a payment in lieu of taxes unless you're not paying taxes. And so that's something that I think is a little bit washy. Also, when I read North Dakota Century Code, it does state that it has to be a primary sector business. And so my question is can anybody tell me other projects within the state of North Dakota, obviously the golf course, I actually looked this up, that our country club is a nonprofit. So I don't know if they even pay taxes. So I'm not really talking about the golf course, but I am talking about the apartment building and about the, what are we calling it, Top Tracer, the driving range type thing. Does anybody have any examples of like where an entity like Top Tracer within the state of North Dakota has actually been given like a tax abatement, or I guess what we're calling pilots? Are there any of these in our state where these types of play facilities have been given tax incentives or pilots? I'm not necessarily looking at you, Gusted, but
I don't- I
I can't.
wouldn't know.
I honestly can't think of one, and so I'm still really questioning the legality of it. If Top Tracer qualifies for, a tax incentive or payment in lieu of taxes, which I feel us as a city council really combine into one when I feel that they are separate agreements. I would really like to see the city of Grand Forks reach out to Wrigley and actually get some kind of interpretation from the state on if this is the proper way to use tax incentives, because everything that I've read in North Dakota Century Code, I do not see Top Tracer qualifying at all. And I personally disagree that apartment buildings actually qualify for tax incentives and or pilots, which I think are two separate agreements, which Mr. Gosted did, so I don't know what we're issuing UND. Also, I really don't have any questions. It's more a bunch of comments. I looked it up. For the biennium, the University of North Dakota's budget is $1.86 billion, and that includes the med school. And that's all of their funds. That is a lot more money than even the city of Grand Forks' budget. And so I have a hard time, incentivizing these things and people saying that they can't afford them when the university has a $1.86 billion budget. And I understand they're a university, but that budget keeps going up. And those are our tax dollars too, which I think is great. A majority of them are, some of that is tuition, so I don't want to X that out. But when I looked it up, it wasn't that much in tuition. So I know that the university is already subsidized by the taxpayers of, both North Dakota and Grand Forks. And so now here we are. And like I said, I love the project. If you guys weren't here right now, I'd be raving all about it. But now here we are talking about tax incentives and or pilots, which we like to squish together. And so I disagree with that part, that we should be continuously subsidizing these types of projects, whether or not it's owned by the university, whether or not it's private developers. I disagree. And I really think that us as a council should really start making an honest effort to distinguish, are we talking about a tax incentive or are we talking about a pilot agreement? Because like Gosted said, they're two separate things. And here we are just interchanging them willy-nilly is the way that I feel. And I don't understand that. I feel we should enter into a tax agreement first, and then it should go on to be a pilot agreement. And so once again, I'm going to ask that before we even move forward on these types of things, that we reach out to Wrigley and ask for his honest interpretation of what this is, and if projects like this actually qualify for these types of things, because I cannot find another project in the state of North Dakota where a recreational type facility like Top Tracer was given any kind of tax incentives or pilots. And so I guess until I hear anything from our state who wants to interpret this law, which I think would be fair, and there's a huge possibility that he's going to come back and say that I'm wrong and that everybody else is right. But I really think that we should reach out to our state and try to get that interpretation from Wrigley. And until we get that type of interpretation from our state, I really cannot support any of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osowski. Further comments? Mr. Friedel, anything for the good of the order? Okay. I think just a casual observation that cities all across the state of North Dakota provide pilots, a pilot which is a tax incentive. We provide pilots all across the state for similar projects, maybe not a top tracer, but mixed-use developments, apartment buildings, you name it. Fargo does it. Bismarck does it. Bismarck did it so well that the legislature changed the law. And so I think if, for example, Drew Wrigley thought that they were being illegally used, he likely would say something. But I don't mean to speak for Mr. Wrigley. Good question is, what do we want to do? Are we going to move this forward? Yes, Ms. Osowski?
I have one more question. Is this going to be the exact same presentation that we're given tomorrow? And are we expected to sit through it again?
Council President Sandy, committee of the whole members, I can't force you to be here tomorrow night and sit through it, but largely it will be the same presentation. And the reason why you're getting it first, and the combined meeting will be too, is because we're asking you to preliminarily approve the pilot, the 90% pilot, and to set the public hearing on September 8th. That's why that's the recommendation in front of you. We're asking to move forward to next Monday. And tomorrow, everyone will hear a similar presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. I recognize that it was good to get this information tonight. Perhaps next time we should have a discussion on whether we want the presentation twice, because of course we could have moved that tomorrow night. Anyway, I'm supportive of the project. I think we need to set the public hearing date personally and get more information tomorrow and see how the other taxing entities feel. I, for one, want to make sure that the Ray Richards Golf Course stays a golf course for the rest of them. Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Moved by Weigel, seconded by Berg. Further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Salentini and Osowski dissent. Thank you all for being here tonight. Council member discussion items for the good of the order. Ms. Osowski, anything to add tonight?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that heat exhaustion is real, and I hope people are staying safe out there. It being too hot outside is just as dangerous as it being too cold. So make sure that you stay hydrated and cool down when you feel symptoms. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berg.
Just want to give a shout out to law enforcement and fire departments and all emergency responders for all of the calls that they've responded to during this heat wave.
Ms. Salentini?
I'm good then.
Okay, Mr. Friedel?
Good, sir.
Mr. Reed? Council Vice President Weigel?
No, thank you.
Very good. Is there a motion to
I
adjourn?
move adjournment.
Osowski, second by Berg. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We're adjourned. Thank you.